Yeah. Hey man, all I'm saying is, nigga, you always got something to say. It's like you don't shut up.
Blazing on the track.
A lot of niggas died 1865. Single Michael fled, highway ain't gon' let it ride. Everybody hollering, black was never on your side. They do maps to tell your apps where you sleep at night. They put that white man on. Got you begging them for answers like that white man know. Had you swearing you was African, that's that white man home. Had you proud to be a savage, that's that white man's zone. And I ain't talking shit, this by definition. And being savage was our nature, y'all be non-existent. We done took your ass out when we was in them kitchens. Instead of showing you how to live and how to maintain business. White supremacy fake. Only way that shit real is if you do what they say. We the guards of the gate. So when they say they fear God, now you know what they made.
You know, I didn't look at my life like it was a movie. I didn't look at all the moving parts. Tell me back, I can't understand what love. When they say love, make you blind. Yeah, I'm introverted. I don't talk to niggas cause I'm constantly serving. I got a trap on top of my back, I got a murder. Head goes out about the streets wanna murder. This shit come with burdens. The streets wanna murder. Streets wanna murder. I told you that this bag of bars come with burdens. This shit come with burdens. This shit come with burdens. This shit come with burdens. Paint the city red. All the shit I see replaying in my head. The streets smoking, so we call them boys instead. Black want a murder and he called with another bag. And I put it, but it was right, really, niggas was crooked. Playing the pity with niggas that cost them a bullet. And when the bullet to him, but I had to pull it. We put in the streets, we put in the trap, my head on the music. I wear my bones on this microphone, it's therapeutic. I know the streets listen when I talk, I can't abuse it, I can't abuse it. I can't abuse it, I can't abuse it, I can't abuse it. I don't talk to niggas cause I'm constantly surfing. I got a trap on top of my back, I got a murder. Can't goes out the block, the streets wanna murder. This shit come with burden.
I'm introverted. I don't talk to niggas cause I'm constantly serving.
I got a trap on top of my back.
Shout out to all the American Aborigines in the chat, man. It's your brother, Big Aboriginal Power. Hopefully everybody having a great Grand Rising. Share the live stream. Drop the fire emojis. It's a blessing to see y'all in the chat, man. Let me know where y'all at and what y'all smoking on. This is the Wake and Bake Show.
This shit come with burdens. This shit come with burdens. Yeah, baby, you know I get it. Stuck in the grind, bitch, I'm on a mission. Over they talking, little baby, I'm different. And on my nuts, I handle my business. And on my phone, shit in the business. I'm really rapping the shit that I'm living. I got a problem inside of my mind. I hear the streets talking, they tell me to get it. Yeah, I gotta get it. Yeah, bitch, tell me I'm tripping. Tell me all of my money on top of my music to give myself what I was missing. Yeah,
I never caught a nigga for a bag. I never caught a nigga in the jam.
I know the ops stepping in the moon.
I know my head going for a bag. I don't talk to niggas cause I'm constantly serving.
I got a trap on top of my back.
And shout out to everybody in the chat, man. How y'all feeling this Grand Rising? Let's get right into the next heavyweight cut, man. You got nothing but bangers. The heavyweight, man. Shout out to my brother. Let go.
Got a 4-5 and a drum, but a 5 in the street.
I took my heart right to the streets and I can't play with that.
This shit that I did for the streets,
I'm not gonna talk about that.
I bought my youngins up new 40,
Told them play with that.
so when them niggas spin the black,
How you gonna play with that?
got a 4-5 and a new drum, but a new 5 in the streets.
Man down on the back blocks of the I died in the streets.
4-5 and a new drum, but a new 5 in the streets.
Man down on the back blocks of the I died in the streets.
Bodies on my conscience, and I won't let it. Paranoia taking over, I won't let it. Out your right mind, you won't sober.
The streets take the toll on you, but you a soldier.
This shit I seen too many times before. Drugs taking over, they won't let them go. They make the wrong move, fuck it, we gon' let it blow. He just let me know that niggas' minds ain't right. Only killing for protection. My young niggas got obsessions. For that clout, they gon' press him. Consumed by the hate, another snake that's gon' bless him. He's supposed to be your brother, but he's screaming out that slide shit. Got a blood oath with my family, that's my tie. Y'all put your faith in me, and now we got it, we gon' all shine. And that's my word to the streets. 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 That's my word, yeah. I sold my heart right to the streets, and I can't play with that. This shit that I did to the streets, I'm not gonna talk about that. How about my youngins up in 40?
Told them play with that.
So when the niggas spin the black,
How you gonna play with that?
L45 with a new drum,
With a new vibe in the streets. Man down on the back blocks of the op died in the streets.
45 with a new drum, with a new vibe in the streets. Man down on the back blocks of the op died in the streets.
Father God, first I ask for forgiveness. I ask that you look past our times that we have fell short. Father God, for that ones who do not know your love, Father God, know that it's my purpose to be a lighthouse in your grace. Wherever you lead my steps, whatever obstacle or hardships to come, I pray that you give us strength in the face of the enemy. Father God, thank you for listening to my soul. Amen.
I sold my heart right to the streets, and I can't play with that. This shit that I did for the streets, I'm not gonna talk about that. How about my youngins up in 40? Told them play with that. So when the niggas spin the black, how you gonna play with that? L45 with a new drum, but a new vibe in the streets. Man down on the back blocks of the I've died in the streets. 05 with a new drum, but a new vibe in the streets. Man down on the back blocks of the I've died in the streets.
Hey man, all I'm saying is, nigga, you always got something to say. It's like you don't shut up.
Blazing on the track.
A lot of niggas died 1865. Single Michael fled high, I ain't gon' let it ride. Everybody hot and black was never on your side. They do maps to tell your apps where you sleep at night. They put that white man on. Got you begging them for answers like that white man know. Had you swearing you was African, that's that white man home. Had you proud to be a savage, that's that white man's zone. And I ain't talking shit, this by definition. If being savage was our nature, y'all be non-existent. We done took your ass out when we was in them kitchens. Instead of showing you how to live and how to maintain business. White supremacy fake. Only way that shit real is if you do what they say.
See, my life has been in motion. I'm a little windy. I'm not giving up yet. If you with me, time to place up your bet. Ain't no turning back, got niggas who ran. When we caught his ass, got caught in that jam. Yeah, you know who I am. Yeah, you know who I am. I can feel it coming. I can feel it coming. It's that feeling in your stomach, you can feel it coming. It's that feeling in your stomach, you can feel it coming. Yeah, you can feel it coming. Fake love, that snake you in your face, love. That snake you in your face, love. I told my brothers we gon' make it, that's how God wrote it. And the snake gon' show his face, cause that's how God wrote it. Too much fake love, that snake you in your face, love. Your face, love. That snake you in your face, love. I told my brothers we gon' make it, that's how God wrote it. And the snake gon' show his face, cause that's how God wrote it. Too much fake love, that snake you in your face, love. Your face, love. That snake you in your face, love. I told my brothers we gon' make it, that's how God wrote it. And the snake gon' show his face, cause that's how God wrote it.
Suave on the track.
Whatever it takes. Alleyway.
Coco, this your season right now.
They won't see me. They won't let me
I gotta sleep with one eye open, been making me nervous. I take a piss, my hand on the strap. I know the eyes wanna murder. I got a feeling, keep my stomach paranoid. I won't let them, they won't see me, I gotta sleep with one eye open, been making me nervous. I take a piss, my hand on the strap. I know the eyes wanna murder. I got a feeling, keep my stomach paranoid. I can't let them, they won't see me, I put attention, all in my blood, all in my veins. They started with perky, now that hair by numb is veins. You started with serving, now them drugs drove you insane. Started with dealing, I grew up with killers, they taught me the game. I got some niggas that die behind, and that shit won't never the same. I know some niggas that lie behind, and that bullet had his name. Ain't no reason to cry about, cause that shit won't never change. MTF the 4th and P, my niggas can't get out the game. I gotta sleep with one eye open, you been making me nervous. I take a piss, my hand on the stern. I know the eyes wanna murder. I got a feeling, keep my stomach paranoid. Yeah. I won't let them, yeah. They won't see me, yeah. I gotta sleep with one eye open, you been making me nervous. I take a piss, my hand on the stern. I know the eyes wanna murder. I got a feeling, keep my stomach paranoid. Yeah. I can't let them, yeah. They won't see me, yeah.
Lost, see, I glossed too, we shit ain't been the same. Heard the ops talking to the
Peace and blessings, man. Hopefully everybody having a great grand rising. It's your brother Big Aboriginal Power. Make sure y'all run them likes up, support the channel, share the live stream. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe. Hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you can get all your latest update and notification to the live stream. Man, it's your brother Big Aboriginal Power, man. Y'all already know the vibes, man. This is the Wake and Bake Show. Let me know where y'all at, what y'all smoking on this grand rising, man. Well, hey, y'all got to hear the sneak peek from the build I got for y'all today. Yesterday, I played y'all a sneak peek. So hopefully y'all ready for what I got in store for you guys today. I need y'all to support the channel, man. Cash out tags at the bottom right of the screen. It's very, very important for you guys to share the live stream, man. I know like last month, I really didn't even go live that much. You see what I'm saying? I didn't even go live. You people ask me, what's up you ain't doing? Listen, I'm back with it. More heat. I need y'all to support the channel. Cash out tags at the bottom right of the screen. PayPal information is now ticking across at the bottom of the screen. Make sure y'all support the channel, man. I'm not even going to hold y'all any longer, man. I want to get straight into this fire-ass bill, but I want to shout out everybody that's tuning in to Big Aboriginal Power channel, the Wake and Bake Show. This is Aboriginal Power. Peace and blessings to you guys that's tuning in, that's not able to type in the chat because you're probably busy doing your daily commutes. All right, so peace and blessings. Make sure y'all be safe. I also want to take the time out to shout out to some of the brothers and sisters that took their time out to comment in the chat. So let me shout out to some of the family. TYX Jordan, what's going on? Shamel Thompson, King of all men, Prophet Levi, the Hackmaster, what's going on? Black Wolf, Original Anglo, Snake God, who else we got up in here? Samaj, Leonidas, Unconscious Goddess, Karma Shabazz. We got Karma Shabazz in this bitch. Frank Burton. Who else we got up in here? Boot Camp. We got Boot Camp. Papa Reed. Empress Freedom Feather. Khalib King. Tim Calisipi. Who else we got up in here? Was that everybody? Yeah, that's everybody. Man, if I miss y'all, drop your names in the chat. I'll shout y'all out. Shout out to Don't Do It. Shout out to Lucius. Gainus, hope I ain't pronounced that wrong. Shout out to Lucius in the goddamn building. Shout out to everybody in the building. Make sure y'all hit that like button, thumb up the video, support the channel. Y'all ready for this heat to get played, man? Y'all gonna have to support the channel. Y'all got to support the channel. Y'all got to support the channel. Hit that like button, share the live stream. Who's gonna be the first one to support the channel today? All right, man. I ain't gonna hold y'all any longer, man. Just run up them likes. Let's get 60 likes in the building. Let's get straight into the meat and potatoes of the build today, man. Let's get straight into the meat and potatoes. Let's go.
Basically, his podcast was blown away, and I said, I gotta get you right on the podcast. We moved mountains, heaven, like the one
Let's get it
in real time, right? And you're like, so what we're gonna get into is the rewriting of history, and like what we're seeing right now. I mean, like we are seeing the taking down of statues, the renaming of schools, the rewriting of our presidential their name, their histories, and all that stuff. It's unbelievable, and it's like this is what they do, and they take your history, they shish kebab it, okay, and then you don't know who you are, where you came from.
It's true. I mean, but what's funny is, so with lies, there's always something, that's a truth, a core truth that the lie is about. And in any story, like someone maybe a generation after generation, they change a story of, recycled stories. They change a lot of aspects of them, but the storytellers do it in a way that decrypts and encrypts a certain amount of data that this stuff that doesn't matter, that disappears, but the core of the story can last. And so that happens a lot. So a lot of it is about trying to put together what was the original event, the seed event that actually happened that they're talking about. And because usually there's an excuse, which is a cover story that, I mean, for whatever reason, right? Because maybe somebody conquered some people. I mean, you know, like you look at Armenia and the Tatars, the Tartars are from the Khazarian cognate went into Armenia, and that's a huge deal. Everyone wants to hide what happened in Armenia. We know that today, you know. So it's one of those things, like I laser cut the notes I was saying, so I'd have something to say. But the first one that comes up to me is Pope Gregory VII, otherwise known as Hildebrand of Savannah. And he was responsible for what was called the Pseudo-Isidorian Decretals. And so the Pseudo-Isidorian Decretals were supposedly written by this guy who's called Pseudo-Isidore, but he probably didn't exist. And it basically just said that the Pope was better than any king. He was infallible. He couldn't.
So, man, listen, y'all see the history. We going into the lost history of Tartaria. We're going to be breaking that down as we go, man. Let's get to the meat and potatoes of this. Let's get it.
You had to kiss his feet, literally, was in the decrees. And basically they said, oh, this was just a really old thing from hundreds of years ago, you know, and now, by the way, you can't be married. I know priests, thousands of you are married. We're going to make you all leave your wives, and your wives will have to be prostitutes or kill themselves because we found this old decree that we made up just now. But hundreds of years ago, we were supposed to be following it. So you have to give up your land to the church. And this is the kind of things that, like, not just that the priests had to lose their land, but these were princes a lot of the time that ran these big churches in these towns. So it was a way of taking over their society. And we know that the Catholic Church.
Dude, well, I know you can just go on forever. I'm going to let you do that. I love it because I can live.
So they take our history and shish kebab it.
You talk all day. I really can. So one thing that I brought you on to talk about was the Khazarians. And like there's all this discussion. Were the Khazarians real? Was it, were they in a war with the Russians?
They're definitely real.
And is that the synagogue of Satan that everybody talks about? Which that's my opinion, but I could be totally wrong on that.
Well, let's relax on the judgment of who they are first and just get into, like, are they real? That's a great first question. So are they real? Well, the Khazarian Empire was very real. I mean, there are plenty of people that are happily admitting that there was a Khazarian Empire. Armenia had been invaded in the 700s by the Khazars. The Khazar kings ran the Volga Bulgarian Empire. You know, at one point, the Uyghur people, which the Chinese have been persecuting, referred to their tribes as the Khazars, which kind of translates into a Q, actually, and are related to a group called the Varingers. And the Varingers was what the Vikings were referred to by a number of people, because, again, they're boatsmen that were everywhere. So different people had different names for the same people that were going places. But Varingers tends to be a name for Khazars. So the Khazars had a huge empire. I mean, it stretched thousands of miles. And what it did was it took over other empires, caliphates that existed. So there were an Arab caliphate called the Umayyad Caliphate, and the Khazars took that over. So they took over Bulgaria, they took over Hungary, they got into the Czech Republic regions, but they were all the way up in Georgia, which is, you know, where Russia is. And there's even a book from Peter Fleming, the brother of Ian Fleming who wrote James Bond, I think Willy Wonka, right? And he has a book called News from Tartary, because they referred to China and Russia, that region in between, as Tartary. So that's the thing, is Tartary and Khazaria are on the same location on the map.
Was there a war? Like, was there a war between these two? And
huge.
Somebody tweeted this. I'm like, oh my God, I think you might blow my mind. Was World War II about erasing the history of Tartaria?
Well, I mean, it was about, Tartaria had already been pretty well erased in the 1800s. And so that's another interesting thing, is that there was a resurgence of people who knew
Let's run that back.
History, or like, was there a war between these two? And
huge.
Somebody tweeted this. I'm like, oh my God, I think you might blow my mind. Was World War II about erasing the history of Tartaria?
I don't know what the hell.
That's another interesting thing, is that there was a resurgence of people who knew about the history of Tartaria, and there are the grandchildren of these emperors and then these prince kings of Khazaria that wanted to bring back their empire. And the Jesuit connection is a big part of this as well, because there's a thing called the suppression. Let me find the card for you. The suppression of the Jesuit society. I have that one somewhere.
Yeah, okay, as you're looking for that, guys, I want to tell you about Lucy Nicotine. Okay, Lucy Nicotine is a company founded by Caltech scientists and former smokers looking for a better and cleaner nicotine alternative, okay? Finally, tobacco alternatives that don't suck, okay? Research and developed for 3 years to be made for people, not patients, okay? Lucy has created a nicotine gum with 4 grams of nicotine that comes in 3 flavors: wintergreen, cinnamon, and pomegranate, okay? Lucy has lozenges with 4 milligrams of nicotine in cherry ice flavor, okay? If you love nicotine, you know smoking ain't good for you, okay? If you talk to Native Americans, they used to love to smoke tobacco, okay? They love to mix it up, and there's nothing wrong with trying another alternative. Get that breathing out of your skulls, okay? Out of your lungs. Use this product, okay? It's one of the best out there, all right? So it's 2021. Get rid of your cigarettes, unplug your rig, throw away your dip, and get Lucy nicotine gum or lozenges, okay? This is the real deal. A subscription to Lucy comes directly to your door each month. It is so simple, you don't have to leave your house because Lucy has delivery down. Boom, right to your house. So here's what's going on. Tip all hat, listeners. Go to lucy.co, C-O, and use the promo code TINFOIL to get 20% off all products, including gum, and lozenges, okay? That is Lucy, LUCY.co, and use the promo code.
Hey, man, we got 60 people in the building. Let's try to get 200 people in the building. Let's try to get 200 people in the building.
Yeah. Hey, man, all I'm saying is, nigga, you always got something to say. It's like you don't shut up.
On the track.
A lot of niggas died 1865. Single Michael fled, highway ain't gon' let it ride. Everybody hollering black was never on your side. They do maps to tell your apps where you sleep at night. They put that white man on. Got you begging them for answers like that white man know. Had you swearing you was African, that's that white man home. Had you proud to be a savage, that's that white man's zone. And I ain't talking shit, this by definition. And being savage was our nature, y'all be non-existent. We done took your ass out when we was in them kitchens. Instead of showing you how to live and how to maintain business. White supremacy fake. Only way that shit real is if you do what they say. We the guards of the gate. So when they say they fear God, now you know what they made.
You know smoking ain't good for you. Comes in 3 flavors: wintergreen and cleaner nicotine alternative. Okay. Finally, tobacco alternatives that don't suck. Okay. Research and developed for 3 years to be made for people, not patients. Okay. Lucy has created a nicotine gum with 4 grams of nicotine that comes in 3 flavors: wintergreen, cinnamon, and pomegranate. Okay. Lucy has lozenges with 4 milligrams of nicotine in cherry ice flavor. Okay. If you love nicotine, you know smoking ain't good for you. Okay. If you talk to Native Americans, they used to love to smoke tobacco. Okay. They love to mix it up, and there's nothing wrong with trying another alternative. Get that breathing out of your skulls. Okay. Out of your lungs. Use this product. Okay. It's
Hey, if y'all can hear everything loud and clear, drop them fire emojis. Sorry about that, y'all. I had to step away. But hey, can y'all drop them fire emojis? Let me know what's going on. We're about to get into the meat and potatoes of the bill. Y'all gonna really enjoy this history of Tartaria, the mud floods, the Khazarians, headquarters been in the United States, dominantly in California, Alaska area. We're gonna get into all that. So make sure y'all hit that like button, thumb up the video. If y'all want to support the channel, cash out tags at the bottom right of the screen, man. It's very important for you guys to support the channel.
one of the best out there. All right. So it's 2021. Get rid of your cigarettes, unplug your rig, throw away your dip, and get Lucy nicotine gum or lozenges. Okay. This is the real deal. Subscription to Lucy comes directly to your door each month. It is so simple. You don't have to leave your house because Lucy has delivery down. Boom, right to your house. So here's what's going on. Tinfoil hat, listeners.
If we good, let me know, man. Support the channel, man. I need y'all to support the channel. Cash out tags at the bottom right of the screen. Y'all want and this is a nice lengthy bill, man. So listen, the more y'all hit that like button, share the live stream, and support the channel, the longer I'm gonna let this go on. Let's get it.
Go to lucy.co, and use the promo code tinfoil to get 20% off all products, including gum and lozenges. Okay, that is Lucy, LUCY.co, and use the promo code tinfoil hat at checkout. Okay, please, this is it. I have to give this disclaimer. Okay, warning: the product contains nicotine derived from tobacco. Nicotine is a addictive chemical. Lucy.co, and be sure to use the promo code TIN. So one thing that blew my mind and why I got really into this Khazarian thing is and I was watching this video on it, and so what always used to bother me was that Israel never recognizes the Armenian genocide. It always bothered me. I go, why is that? For people who like talk about their genocide, why would they not recognize this other genocide officially? And then I saw a video which explained that the Khazarians, when you go far enough, are Turkish.
Well, essentially that region. They're not necessarily Uralic, which is the people. So Turkey also has Kurdish people, has a bunch of different kinds of people. But the Turks, you know, they were from Constantinople, which is in Turkey, or Istanbul today, and they controlled this region, which we now call part of Rome. This is your guest who's talking about how Rome didn't exist. I think what they kind of are talking about is how Byzantine Empire wasn't really like we relabel things because you have so many mercenaries, they're taking so many people's kids, and they're building this kind of convoluted thing that we're calling Rome. But you have, you know, the Etruscans, which is, and then the Thracians, which is the Tar. The TH is really Tar in a lot of these cultures. So you have Taratians and Tripoli actually has to do with that in Libya and Lebanon. Yeah, you're from Damascus.
I come from Khazarian? I'm
not. But the name of the city, Tripoli, which is where Phoenicians trade networks really started, is a huge Tartarian city. And so the Tarmacs also, when the war happened between the Khazars and the I think it was the Umayyad Caliphate at that time, but it was a Muslim Arab invasion. The Tarmacs were the names of the generals, like the lead generals, and they had a main one called Tarkhan. So the Tarkhan, Tarmacs, you constantly come up with the same interactions with these names. But the war that was mainly people talk about with Khazarians in the 600s, and then by the 700s they basically created this giant empire, and the Khazarian Empire thrives for several centuries, and it gets really, really big because it's able to expand over places that have already been conquered by the Islamics. And that's another thing that makes the Spanish Inquisition so important, right? Because they're so anti-Jewish, but they're really anti-Khazarian, because the Khazarians were running the Umayyad Caliphate, which controlled Spain. So they were trying really hard to push out the people that were running the government, because they were part of this confederation that went way further than the small region that now we call Spain. Again, you have to remember, back then there was no Spain. It's Catalan, it's Galicia, it's the Basque state. I mean, all these new nations like that exist are brand new names, right? Like the only thing that's on the map originally is Tartaria, because it's the terra and it's the land and it's different resource republics that existed and traded with each other.
Dude, you know, with Bishop Larry Gator's turning his back on us, there is a room for someone on that Mount Everest, and somebody is going for it. Somebody, I mean, you're talking Khazarians, Tartaria. I mean, that my nipples are hard, okay? So, but I could talk about this all day, because this is what my jam is, because it's all about, you know, it's like you were kind of talking about on the, you know, your episode, my Patreon, about, you know, basically the resetting of all this stuff and why they don't want us to know this. This is how they control us. I mean, it goes back to things I say all the time. All culture is manufactured. The stuff that we call culture right now has been manufactured in a think tank to control us and basically push on us stuff that isn't good for us. And that's across all different pop culture, black culture, feminist culture, hippie culture. These are all made by bisexual lizard people in a think tank to create, to basically push us in a certain direction and not allow us to know our history.
And it's actually important to do that to destroy the lineage's ability to carry on ideas. And so a big part of it is moving their kids back and forth. You have these wars, you take the fathers and you make them go somewhere else. You take the children, because they're orphans, you put them in foundries, which is orphanages on other parts of the world, so that they learn a new language and they're completely lost of their original culture and they're trying to assimilate. It's a huge way of controlling people. One of the guys who figured out what you're talking about in terms of history, like, I mean, this goes back like centuries, actually. I think if you go back to Jean Alduin is a great example. He was a Frenchman who Jean Hardouin, but it's Arduin. He was one of the guys who figured out that he's a librarian in Britain, and he looked at a lot of books that his father had and figured, my God, this guy from Constantinople in the 4th century, Saint John of Constantinople, probably is the actual John who wrote this book that's supposed to be from 1,000 years earlier, the Bible version of John. And he started to realize that a number of these historical texts are identical lines. So this is a map, and it's really small, so it's hard to see, but you can see it at one point is each line of the birthdays and death days of each king in a row from the Roman Empire to the Bible. And I've sent you these before, but I'll send you in a better picture because it's like hard to see.
No, I love that, dude. Yeah, that's kind of what the guys who said Rome didn't exist.
Right.
That's
we've been using that
the
system. There's actually like hundreds of years of that research, starting with Jean Hardouin, and eventually got into the studies of Nikolai Morozov. Morozov is an interesting guy. He was about 100 years old, like 90 something, and he was a Russian who met Marx, met Lenin, and met Stalin. And so he went. I mean, like, not a lot of people bridge the gap between the idea and like the functional Stalinite state. But communists were really into this historical narrative revision at that time, because they thought Napoleon's war, there's some weird things about all of that, and the historical lines of these kings that don't fit, and that their culture also, they didn't use the Gregorian calendar until the 20th century. A lot of places into the 1920s didn't use the Gregorian calendar. So they had to kind of figure out how to match their calendar, which wasn't fitting with the Western calendar. And eventually they found the only thing that would make any sense is that dates were copied and manipulated. And the only people who could have done that were priests. And the priests were the ones who had been suppressed. So for about 100 years, well, more or less, maybe like 70, but it depends, because the thing is, that's where it gets really weird. Is the Society of Jesus' suppression? We don't know what happened, because when they were erased and they had their lands taken, they disappeared.
Society of Jesus, you said?
Yeah, the Jesuit Society of Jesus. So, you know, the Jesuits are the black pope and the guys.
Are you going black nobility, dude?
No, we can go there too if you want to talk about Pushkin and St. Peter's.
Yeah, let's just hit the trifecta.
This is important. This is important. You have to do it. One of the main reasons is because racism is like really pervasive in like the community of truthers for some reason, which is like really sad. Because like the main thing about Tartaria I find interesting is it's a non-ethno state. It's a confederated trade networks of different kinds of diverse people, and you have these crazy examples where like, you know, Prince was talking about the founding fathers of America being partially African descent. Like, and it's obviously true in Louisiana and all of New France. It's all down in Brazil. I mean, it's tons of Jose Francia, who was the king of Paraguay, or president of Paraguay rather, but same idea. He was, you know, partially black. I mean, we have tons of these examples, but Russia too. So Russia, you have St. Peter. He adopted a kid supposedly who was a African slave who was Abram Pushkin. And that's the grandfather of Pushkin, the writer who was like considered the greatest writer in Russia, you know, and he had 11 kids with 11 great, you know, families that extended outwards, and there's huge amounts of African Russian nobility, you know, and the Black Russian isn't just a drink. So this is the thing, like, we're so used to hearing that there's this, you know, dynamic in terms of race, but really it comes down to the specific families, like you're saying, that have control over certain regions. And the Jesuit priests were often descendant of specific royal lines. And so you had these certain families that went out and they would conquer a place, and then they would instill this, you know, you can't have a family, these kids are bastards of these princes, and they call everyone father. And so they built this weird kind of, I mean, not to say that the Catholic Church doesn't do some good, but it's also like this weird Marxist theology, liberation theology, but everyone is an altar boy for this foundry, you know. And like, I mean, that they did this in Paraguay and in Japan, you know, half of Japan was Catholic for a while before they killed a third of Japan. Like, I mean, the world was really dented and changed by the Jesuits.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy, right? It's just,
yeah.
Dude, why do you call them father? Oh, man, that is nuts, dude. That is nuts. Have you heard the White Brotherhood?
Tell me more.
No, that's Amy says. She says there's one level above the Black nobility, and it is the White Brotherhood that's even higher. You know that.
I'll have to dig deeper into that. You know.
Well, I love that. Amy nails it all the time, so I'm interested because, you know, because then when you hear about White Brotherhood, what do you start thinking about? Redneck, like racist. He's like, here we go. Here's where they're flipping it again.
I was Captain Planet, Agenda 21 Santa Cruz kid growing up with like vegetarians, you know. So I don't. My first thought actually is they're Saturn worshippers, and so the next is Jupiter.
Here we go, dude. He's hitting it all, Johnny. Why don't you look like you're having fun?
I'm having loads of fun.
Oh yeah,
he's going for it, Johnny. Blue Chew or rock hard dick on you. That's right, Blue Chew. Dropping big D's on you. Guys, when's St. Patty's Day? Anybody? When is it?
March,
dude. St. Patty's Day. You want to get lucky like a leprechaun? Huh? You want that girl to deal your pot of gold? Huh? Then you better get yourself some Blue Chew, all right? And stack that gold, rock hard gold, for that lady, okay? That's how it's going. If you want some action on St. Patty's Day, get yourself a little bit of Blue Chew action, right? You love Blue. Dude, I go on the road with Tito Sanchez. He always has some Blue Chew. He's like, I'm always ready all the time. Dude, there's one thing about Tito Sanchez. He's ready for everything all the time. Okay, that's why it's including getting rock hard for the ladies.
Man, this old freaky ass Pepperwood.
By online, by licensed physicians, so you don't have to go to the doctors, okay? Or doctor's office or wait line at the pharmacy, shipped right to you, okay? Again, that's...
Hey, shut the live stream, man. We only got 78 people in here. What the fuck is going on? Y'all ain't fucking with the bill today? I'm mean, I know these niggas on some bullshit, but y'all ain't fucking with the bill today. Y'all ain't fucking with it. If y'all ain't fucking with it, let me know. Shit, I could be out doing something goddamn else. Shit. Only got 78 people in here. Ain't nobody shared the live stream or nothing. The fuck? Oh, App TV Live?
PLUE2.com.
App TV Live? I didn't even know Cuz was live. That's crazy. My bad. I wouldn't even know went live if I knew Cuz was live. Did I go live after him or he went live after me? I don't know.
Promo code tinfoil, okay? And get weird, my friends. We appreciate them sponsoring the show.
I guess I should also mention King Joseph the first. So this is the Portuguese king who had lost control of Portugal essentially because he was nearly assassinated by the Tavora incident. And so in Portugal, like last summer, I went there and I found this public urinal, which is a salted street. It's barren in the middle of nowhere. There's a sign there. I wish I had the sign. I don't have it, but it says something to the effect of, this is the spot of the, where they hanged and castrated and murdered the Tavora family's royal nobility who had their peerage taken from them after they attempted to assassinate King Joseph after the earthquake had destroyed the palace. So there's this giant earthquake, destroyed the castle, and the king's living in a tent, and he doesn't know what to do, and then someone tries to kill him and his chauffeur. And after that, they wipe out a number of important people that are associated with the Jesuits. So this starts the line, like, we got to get rid of these Jedi Sith dudes that are trying to take over our whole world. And it all culminates in, I think the mission is the movie where, like in Paraguay, you see the Jesuits are like, you know what, this doesn't belong to the Portuguese or the Spanish, it belongs to God. So we're going to, they have a war, which ends up becoming a triple alliance war around Paraguay. It's a state war that wipes out 99% of the population. And
what?
Yeah, 99% is a lot of people. So, I mean, you have to also know that Paraguay used to be like pretty much 100% literate, like university educated astronomer, Jesuit trained kids. You had women and men both that were fully literate. Like it was probably more literate than just about anywhere in the world even today. And in terms of what they were creating, they were prolific. So Paraguayan theater, and so much of this was burned and destroyed. And all you had left were like a few women, mainly just children, who ended up being assimilated by Argentinian and Brazilian forces. But Paraguay is not anything left of what it was before. I mean, there are some Guarani that have kind of wandered around, but like even so, the Guarani are kind of, so they tackled, Paraguay, completely wiped it out. But over the next couple of generations, the Jesuits were banned all over the world, except for maybe in 2 or 3 places. So in the United States, peculiarly enough, in the 1800s, 17 to 1800s, for a little while there, the Jesuits were kind of hanging out, and they lost control in British Canada, but they were in parts of the United States, and then into Russia. So under Catherine the Great, like the Jesuits were allowed to keep a kind of quiet coup attempt going. And then over about 50, 60 years, they had the last pope removed. They managed to manipulate the Franciscans to sort of take them over.
Is that where the black nobility comes into, that they put the pope under house?
I was literally going to say and talk about the black nobility and how they put a fake pope in position to act like the real pope, which is the black pope. If you ever heard of the pope, the real pope is called the black pope. And that's all from the black nobility. That's from the black royal families that ran the world, that created what we call the Bilderberg or New World Order. These are black folks. These are melanated Negroes.
The rest, or like he stays in the Vatican for like, they said like 50 years, and that's why they call it the black nobility.
Well, there's 2 kinds of black nobility. So the one thing is there really are black families from Africa that were powerful in Germany. And so the House of Wilhelm are descended from Berbers that probably intermarried with black people, and came from Africa. And so Rammstein made that music video about Deutschland recently, which has got just a black woman playing Germany. That's historically based on what is to be believed about black nobility in the Teutonic Order. But if you go back beyond that, the idea of these 13 families that made up the Knights Templar and Ignatius Loyola and like who the Crusaders were, they were royals that were princes from a Tuscan region.
You hear that? They saying that all this history comes from a black family. If y'all can hear this loud and clear, please drop some fire emojis in the chat, man. Drop them fire emojis in the chat. I'm probably about to end this motherfucker. Ain't nobody supporting the channel, man. Ain't nobody hitting the like button. Ain't nobody sharing the live stream. Ain't nobody even.
How black they were, I don't know. It's not like the most important thing necessarily.
Well, not that
but
they're
it is,
black people,
yeah.
but that's the name of them based on the period was considered black and dark.
Well, I mean, it's not necessarily okay. So also, there's this idea that darkness is God. So Lucifer is light, right? So if Lucifer is light, what is that? God, right? Yeah. So this is the Saturn worshippers, you have to remember. So their whole idea is Saturn's another black sun. And I don't know if you guys remember the solar eclipse, but I remember thinking about that black sun story. Oh, that gets into Tecumseh. Good job. Thanks for that. Thanks for that
No
so
problem,
much.
dude.
So Tecumseh comet. You might have heard of Napoleon's comet. You might not have. But hopefully the last guys talked about it. But it all comes around to Tecumseh. So Tecumseh is a guy who was a Confederate. Now, you hear that and you think the Confederate Americas, and you're right, the Confederate America.
Did y'all hear what he's saying? Did y'all hear what he's saying? He about to go in on Tecumseh. This is that high science right here, man. Hit that like button.
There's this idea that darkness is God. So Lucifer is light, right? So if Lucifer is light, what is that? God, right? Yeah. So this is the Saturn worshippers, you have to remember. So their whole idea is Saturn's another black sun. And I don't know if you guys remember the solar eclipse, but I remember thinking about that black sun story. Oh, that gets into Tecumseh. Good job. Thanks for that. Thanks for that
No
so
problem,
much.
dude.
So Tecumseh comet. You might have heard of Napoleon's comet. You might not have. But hopefully the last guys talked about it. But it all comes around to Tecumseh. So Tecumseh is a guy who was a Confederate. Now, you hear that and you think the Confederate Americas, and you're right, the Confederate America, but not United States Confederacy in the 1860s. We're talking about Confederate Indians that were Native American tribes that had a confederation, but not
Confederate. What? Do y'all hear this nigga going in on this black nobility? I don't think y'all hear him. If y'all hear everything, drop them fire emojis, man. Drop them fire emojis. Support the channel, man. Cash App tags at the bottom right of the screen. Make sure y'all support the channel, man.
United States Confederacy in the 1860s. Comet. You might have heard of Napoleon's comet. You might not have. But hopefully the last guys talked about it. But it all comes around to Tecumseh. So Tecumseh is a guy who was a Confederate. Now, you hear that and you think the Confederate Americas, and you're right, the Confederate America, but not United States Confederacy in the 1860s. We're talking about Confederate Indians that were Native American tribes that had a confederation of Iroquois and Algonquin. The
Confederate Indians. Listen.
Americas, and you're right, the Confederate America, but not United States Confederacy in the 1860s. We're talking about Confederate Indians that were Native American tribes that had a confederation of Iroquois and Algonquin Indians that lived all around. And this is,
man, I want y'all to look up the book, The Algonquin Conquest to Mauritania. The Algonquin Conquest to Mauritania, man. It talks about how they went to Egypt.
What Benjamin Franklin and a number of other founding fathers said was a bigger inspiration to them. Indians that were Native American tribes that had a confederation of Iroquois and Algonquin Indians that lived all around. And this is what Benjamin Franklin and a number of other founding fathers said was a bigger inspiration to them than the socialized pedophilia Athenian state of Greek Hellenistic democracy that everyone thinks is like the American history is all.
Hey, man, let's get these likes up, y'all. I want to continue this, man. We ain't got halfway in it, but I need y'all to run them likes up. Run them likes up, man. We got the $2 challenge, man. Everybody support the channel. Everybody in the chat support the channel. Cash App tags at the bottom right of the screen. We got to work extra hard, hitting these like buttons, and pushing the live streams out, man. They shadow banning the channel, man. I need y'all to work extra hard with this.
This Greek thing. I mean, no, it's like not. It's really, I mean, it's really from American tribes that we're interacting.
Hey, can y'all hit the like button? Can y'all hit that like button, please? That's all I ask.
It's really from American tribes that we're interacting with each other. So Tecumseh was very important to trying to revolt against what he was okay. The Nova France thing was fine. The French were really used to xenophilia. They weren't afraid of travel. They liked to have sex with people that they traveled to see, and they had new families, and they created like hybridized communities. And so for a lot of it was like they were bringing Moulin Rouge prostitutes to Indians and trading them so they could create families of fur trackers. So America was like pretty different at first, but then it got into the Indians were being beaten by the British, and the British specifically were like Saxon traders were trying to take over, not following their deals. So Tecumseh said we have to stop them, and they had this huge civil war. And again, this is a civil war, but it's a civil war of Confederate tribes and of colonies that are fighting with each other over what is America. So you could call it a real war, but it is what it is. It's a number of different kinds of people. But the main thing about Tecumseh is he said that a comet would come, and it would be a black sun would be seen. The black sun would be the result of this comet, and the comet would like last for a long time, and that would be like the end of the order and the beginning of the reset and this new world order, and like stuff that you hear about today from like David Icke or from us, basically now I guess that kind of stuff was being talked about by Native Americans that were like, hey, I have this bad feeling, I got a bad vibe about these new guys, like I think that it's going to destroy our whole society. So Tecumseh's comet started in 1811, and so this is like, you think, okay, a comet, but I don't know if you guys remember, like in 1997, there was a comet you could see for like 18 months straight, and it was pretty important in history. Like the last thing like that was Tecumseh's comet, and it's otherwise called Napoleon's comet because at the same time, 1811, 1812, Napoleon's like waxing and waning in Europe, like he takes over Spain, he puts his brother in charge of that, and he takes over, he goes into Russia and they burn down Moscow. I mean, this is the official history. There's a lot to that, but simultaneously, the war of 1812, the United States is like and you have to look at the time frame around it because it's this big geological and astronomical events that are happening. So 1808, you have the first, you have the new presidential election, you have the gubernatorial, which leads to the Madison Conquest and the end of the Federalists in the United States. Venezuela, you have the Caracas earthquakes. And so Venezuela is interesting because Venezuela is the Spanish holdout. After Spain's been taken over by Napoleon, you have Spanish loyalists to Ferdinand, right? I think Ferdinand II. So they're all, we want to stay, Spanish in Venezuela, but like, so the only way to do that is to secede from Spain, right? Because, it's now Napoleonic Spain. So then there's a giant earthquake on a saint's holiday, which, is bad sign, symbol to the people. So there's a revolution in Venezuela, which ends up destroying the Venezuelan, Spanish loyalists and their elite, and leads to a Bolivarian victory. So all around the world, you have this thing in 1811, 1812. It's kind of like a secret war, like a World War Zero that no one likes to talk about. And
World War Zero, I love that.
Yeah, and I think World War Zero is where the Tartary history is most lost. And I think we'll have to someday do more on 1619 and like 1533 because you can get into the Croatan because everyone's talking about the 1619 project, right? I think we need to take that over because there's some really important true things about 1619.
Is everybody talking about 1619?
Have you heard of that?
I haven't been on those chat boards, but I guess is that
the left? Yeah, like the
1619 was a malarkey story that they try to allude that Africans came here to America first. But what they failed to mention in all history conversations is that white slaves entered America in them same areas in Hampton, Virginia in 1609. Why is history not talking about the white slaves that entered in the colonies in 1609 up to 1618?
The mainstream, is saying that like we'll have to someday do more on 1619 and like 1533 because you can get into the Croatan because everyone's talking about the 1619 project, right? I think we need to take that over because there's some really important true things about 1619.
Is everybody talking about 1619?
Have you heard of that?
I haven't been on those chat boards, but I guess is that
the left? Yeah, like the mainstream, is saying that Project 1619 needs to be taught in schools, that America's founded on slavery in 1619. It's not accurate, but it's interesting because there are things that
real.
Well, let's take a lie and make it true, Sam. Okay, so let's start with the true aspects. For one thing, slave comes from the word Slav. So yeah, Slavs were being taken, and slavery is like this thing that the Moorish Empire originally did, and along the Barbary coast, the Sephard slav traders this is actual history that's worth mentioning. I mean, it has nothing to do with racism, or it maybe it does, but it's certainly not Eurocentric. Second, also, 1619 is not when it started, because 1533 you have the Croatan settlement of the Lenape, and that's where basically the king sent a bunch of English people who just disappeared, and they always wondered what happened to them, and everyone said that the Indians ate them, which is like what? Like what? Like why is this? This is
the Indians ate them, man. Listen, this is the wake and bake bill. I guess the bill wasn't going right because I didn't even light my backwood up. Let me light this motherfucker up. Where y'all at and what y'all smoking on this Grand Rising? We about to get right back into it, man. All right, fire in the hole. Let's get it.
Eurocentric. Second, also, 1619 is not when it started, because 1533 you have the Croatan settlement of the Lenape, and that's where basically the king sent a bunch of English people who just disappeared, and they always wondered what happened to them, and everyone said that the Indians ate them, which is like what? Like what? Like why is this? This is the thing, we do need to change history in perspective, because that we're still living in a time where we're thinking that Indians just ate these people because we're racist. Is the only reason to think that. I mean, if there was
the enemy. You deem. I mean, North Korea thinks Americans eat children. I mean, some do, but not all of us. Right? Right? Not all of us.
No,
but some do. And what you're seeing right now is the 100% shish kebabbing of our culture and our history done. I mean, like I was just talking to all these kids are coming back.
The nigga said shish kebabbing.
About xenophobia and like explorers who are the opposite. So what did happen to people that probably weren't eaten by the natives? Well, they weren't supported by the British government. They were abandoned, and so they joined the natives and they made families and they assimilated. And so we now have examples of Welsh and British words or certain phonemes and phonetics that are along the East Coast connected to the Algonquins. So, I mean, there's fascinating.
Is that where near Johnny lives? Isn't that the whole thing about that island, Johnny?
Yes, saying that these ancient language has the same phonetics as Algonquin. Do y'all hear what he's saying?
And they made families and they assimilated, and so we now have examples of Welsh and British words or certain phonemes and phonetics that are along the East Coast connected to the Algonquins. So I mean, there's fascinating.
Is that where near Johnny lives? Isn't that the whole thing about that island, Johnny?
Yeah, it's what Rai was talking about.
Yeah, Rai and his brother.
There's a bunch of beautiful like integrations in history. It's like the opposite of the message they like to tell us. But okay, so you've got 260 days of comments raining down from the sky, and you've got accounts from the Mississippi River of the river running the other direction.
The river running the other direction. They said the Mississippi don't run north to south; it runs from south to north. It's like an escalator taking you up. Or is it the natural flow? When you look north, is that really going up or is that really going down in elevation? Because I'm from Tennessee, which is the south. Detroit is the north of us. But if you go from Tennessee to Detroit, did you know that you're going down in elevation? That Tennessee is a higher elevated place than Detroit and Chicago. So if you go to Chicago and Detroit from the Tennessee, Kentucky, Georgia region, you're actually going down in elevation, which explains why the Mississippi seems to be going up, because up is really what? I'll let y'all answer that.
Rai and his brother.
There's a bunch of beautiful like integrations in history. It's like the opposite of the message that they like to tell us. But okay, so you've got 260 days of comments raining down from the sky, and you've got accounts from the Mississippi River of the river running the other direction. Like the crazy things are happening. Earthquakes.
It went in reverse. Water went in reverse.
Right. So it's supposed to flow south and it starts flowing north. And there's people that are wiped out all over the place. I mean, this isn't just in Minnesota or in South America or in Russia. It's everywhere. Everyone all over the world is seeing this. Simultaneously, we were talking about the Tambora eruption, which happens to be like the biggest eruption theoretically in history, not the biggest volcanic explosion, which is Krakatoa, which is caused at the same time, but doesn't happen until 1870s. And I'll explain why in a second. But basically with Tambora, it started to erupt in 1808, the same year as the American elections and all of these crazy things that happened in Portugal. And
what else happened in 1808? The Madrid earthquake happened in 1808. The Madrid earthquake sent out shockwaves throughout all of North America, which created what we now call the mud floods. The mud floods was a chain reaction, after effect from the initial comment or the earthquake. The Madrid earthquake happened in 1808. This is getting turned.
Simultaneously, we were talking about the Tambora eruption, which happens to be like the biggest eruption theoretically in history.
The Tambora eruption, right? The volcano that went off, that shot comets in the sky, creating an earthquake, an aftershock, creating mud floods all in the south, east, and the Midwest region.
This isn't just in Minnesota or in South America or in Russia. It's everywhere. Everyone all over the world is seeing this. Simultaneously, we were talking about the Tambora eruption, which happens to be like the biggest eruption theoretically in history, not the biggest volcanic explosion, which is Krakatoa, which is caused at the same time, but doesn't happen until 1870s. And I'll explain why in a second. But basically with Tambora, it started to erupt in 1808.
Support the channel, y'all, man. We got 86 people in here. Let's try to get these, let's try to get 200 people, 100 people in here, man. Share the live stream. I know a couple people live this Grand Rising. They be trying to get in my little spot. Shout out to my brother Al TV. I'm not even talking about him. Shout out to my brother, man. But it's a couple other people live too. They be trying to get into the wake and bake vibes, man. But they just don't cut it, man. Shout out to everybody in the chat. Make sure y'all share the live stream. I should have saved this live. It ain't this one on the one.
Same year as the American elections and all of these, crazy things that happened in Portugal and all of this stuff that started to go down. But it collapsed, and so it didn't fully. It started to close itself, and the water cooled it. The heat kept rising. It finally exploded in 1815. So, but for 4 years, there was just nothing but black smoke and fire, and it was just destroying the environment. And then so Krakatoa similarly started to capture all this gas. And so finally, when that erupted, it sent shockwaves around the world that bounced off each other. And so they could hear, everyone everywhere could hear what was that noise 7 times because of the explosions, sound waves bouncing. That's how big of an explosion that was in history. So, I mean, it just, in terms of the crazy, things that happened because of that, there was a thing called the year without a summer. And so there was like no crops, just complete devastation, people living off of whatever last reserved grain they could. A lot of people died, millions of people died. And winter changed the way people lived because so many places were so much warmer. But this was a huge feedback loop climate change that was pretty much instantaneous. And we're used to this idea of gradual global warming that we have 100 years to see. When a giant volcano goes off, it actually can affect things. So
Yellowstone, dude, that's what I think's gonna happen.
It will be bad. Yeah, it's true.
Do you want to survive? If like the planet's destroyed, do you want to survive? Are you like, dude, you and a couple squirrels?
I mean, a reset, I think I'd be all right with the reset because I got my own laser, But I don't think everyone wants to do it. I mean, well, okay, you think about the Malta and you think about this idea of Atlantis. And so a big part of Tartaria is trying to tie together a lot of different individuals' histories into a narrative that fits this new lens of, how does it all fit together? Using the software to figure out which dates all fit together, But Atlantis, stories like Herodotus wrote about these sustainable autonomous city states. And we found great examples of these 23 square but circular mile, in terms of volume, rings diameter. In Mauritania, I've been to a bunch in Spain and, in South America, these like circular ring cities. And what you start to find, do I have it? Oh, thank God. The star fortresses. So this is one of my biggest victories, I would say, in the world right now, is that I've gotten them to stop calling these things bastion forts, because they're not just bastion forts. So there's this crazy thing where they say that these forts were designed by somebody in the 15th century in Italy, and that they're designed specifically just for war purposes. The thing about it is, everywhere I go, I find star forts. And, our group, the Tartaria Nova, 13th Monkey is we have like a lot of people that do research all around the world living in former Taiwan or former Formosa, which is now Taiwan, and in Holland and in Scandinavia and in Venezuela, South America, these like circular ring cities. And what you start to find, do I have it? Oh, thank God. the star forts, the star fortresses. So this is one of my
snaps.
This is one of my biggest victories, I would say, in the world right now, is that I've gotten them to stop calling these things bastion forts, because they're not just bastion forts. So there's this crazy thing where they say that these forts were designed by somebody in the 15th century in Italy, and that they're designed specifically just for war purposes. The thing about it is, you know, everywhere I go, I find star forts. And, you know, our group, the Tartaria Nova, you know, 13th Monkey is we have like a lot of people that do research all around the world living in former Taiwan or former Formosa, which is now Taiwan, and in Holland and in Scandinavia and in Venezuela. It's still like looking for all of these remnants and archaeological, you know, examples of these places. The thing about star forts are they're built on water lines for the water currents. They're built around resources so that the rivers can run and then they can collect the water. And they can also defend against flooding. You know, so this is huge in Holland. It's huge in Russia. By the way, you know that California was conquered by the Russians in the 1800s as well? Yeah, no one likes to talk about that, but it's pretty good, man. Is that I think we're talking about Catherine the Great, who let the Jesuits do their thing before they ended up back in power, dug up the Pope that had excommunicated him's body, put the corpse on trial, excommunicated and pulled his soul out of heaven, deleted and burned all the books, and went back.
There was a real trial for that.
Oh yeah, for sure. And
can we do that with Woodrow Wilson?
You could do like a seance, like in South Park, probably.
Yeah, just dig him up and put him on trial for being a scumbag, and then I want to chop him up and put him in a speed bump outside.
The white people be doing too much.
A gay bathhouse. That's why. That's why I want Woodrow Wilson.
That's what I'm saying. White people do too much. Y'all heard what he just said? Listen to this shit that this honky just illustrated.
It's rough. I don't know if you guys noticed. That's why I'm
following it.
So I've got Paul I and Catherine the Great, the son of the mother. And so what happened was he was taken as a baby out of her womb and never allowed to like breastfeed from her. And he was raised by Freemasons in private schools, and then watched his father be assassinated by the Freemasons, which they made look like Catherine the Great had done it. So when he became king, he sent out the Russian American trade company, like the Virginia Company, kind of a thing from Russia. And so they were trying to do the Trans-Pacific telegram. And so they set up this huge rail system, and they were
the Trans-Pacific. That's when the Asians and the Pacific Islanders and a lot of these Filipinos got enslaved by the Spanish in colonial Mexico, becoming Chinos, later on being classified as Indians. Man, hit that like button, share the live stream, man. Let's get it cracked.
Which they made look like Catherine the Great had done it. So when he became king, he sent out the Russian American trade company, like the Virginia Company, kind of a thing from Russia. And so they were trying to do the Trans-Pacific telegram. And so they set up this huge rail system, and they were trying to build
where?
Well, from across Siberia into Alaska, and then down to Northern California into Santa Cruz.
Okay, this is very interesting, what you're saying right now. A couple things. If you take a look at what everybody is talking about with these, you know, PG fires, and you take the line of the fires and you put it with where they want to put a high-speed rail system, it lines up. But you're like, is it just going to be through America? And I go, no, man. This thing's going to go from Southern Cal, I think Nevada actually, all the way up California, through Canada, around through Siberia, down to Russia and China. Right. It's like and that's exactly weird. What they're talking about.
If you look at it from the North Pole polar projection, it's like a straight line. It's like a slightly curved straight line. So it's amazing. And the weirdest part is that this already existed as far as we can tell. You know, I mean, like in terms of the metrics for how things are built and how wide these spaces are and where they are. I mean, there's a great book. I think it's called Backpacking in Siberia, or Tent Life in Siberia. Tent Life in Siberia. It's about the first Trans-Pacific Railroad and telegram system that they were like, and all of the weird Uyghurs and Tartars and tribes that they met along the way through Siberia to get to Alaska and down the coast. Whom, you know, you have to remember, they all lived in this big arcs, like from Russia to California. Like it's you know, in China and Russia are you have to also remember that Manchuria in China was like Korea. They were Russia. They were Manchurian. They had redheaded people that were wiped out by the Spanish flu. 100 million people were wiped out. So, for a long time before they called it, first they call it Tartary, then they call it Manchuria, and then they started calling it China because of this Emperor Xin character. But
what they call it before China?
Tartary. A lot of people do. The Jesuits all refer to it as Tartary. Marco Polo called it
tell me. No. I had a guy on my podcast on Zero was telling me that I forget his name. He's a kung fu master. He went to China and learned all these amazing. He learned kung fu then by the Communist Party.
Absolutely.
That completely rewriting history. Now, one thing I want to ask you, there's this whole theory I brought up the other day that Alexander the Second, he helped Abraham Lincoln in the Civil War. Have you ever heard any of that?
Alexander the Second, really?
Well, whichever Alexander was around during Abraham Lincoln's time.
How? I don't know this story. No. What's the background of that?
That they had just kicked out all the serf. The Russia had just basically kicked out the Rothschilds. They kicked them out, and then we'll get into what.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of thought that Abraham Lincoln was the Rothschild, actually. But yeah, keep going.
100%, and so wasn't. And I think that Kennedy was a Roosevelt, right? I mean, that's the whole theory. They have no problems with taking out their own. But
would you say that? I was going to ask him. Would you say that the Nazis are somehow?
Hold on, XG. We're literally talking about something, and you want me to do another thing.
We'll go there. We'll go there. But yeah,
we'll answer that. Hold on. Unbelievable. Hold on a second. So, my whole theory is that why doesn't the World Banking Organization want to, or the IMF and all those international banking cartels want to work with Russia when they want to work with China? Because, communism, they're both communists, right? They're communists, now they're using like their communist capitalism thing. Why? And I think it comes down to basically Tartaria and the Khazarians.
Yeah, it's who wants to own the democracy, right? Because you can have a student government that's run by the students, but they can pick the colors of the flags and stuff, but it's owned by this bigger private school. That's kind of the way that they want to run.
And that's the history of it. It's like, why does Turkey get brought into NATO? It makes no sense. Well, unless you kind of take a look at Khazarians, and then on top of that, this allows them to, anybody who messes with Turkey, all the rest of the people have to come in and back up NATO, right? I mean,
Turkey's got clout, not for Turkey. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, with respect to Ataturk and like some amazing things have happened in Turkish history. Like, I still have to respect the Kurds as well. But like, let's be real. Turkey is valuable for the land. People see that they own and have control over Istanbul, which is one of the most important cities, more important than Rome to some people at least, that it's going to be included in the roster, because these are what a state is defined as by Weber is the legitimate source of violence, right? So who more fitting of a description of that is than the Turks?
100%. I mean, like in their attack on Armenia. This is all
legitimized. It's legitimized violence, and it's also ethnocide. I mean, and I'm not like picking. This is a historical thing in history.
I'm Armenian. You can pick a side. Don't worry about that. We're very pro-Armenia, anti-Turk.
I happen to be very pro-Armenia. Like, it's a matter of like just randomly.
So I think XG, you wanted to ask about the Vatican and the Nazis. Is that what you wanted to ask about?
No, I was going to ask you. I was doing some stuff about Tartaria before this, and I've heard that they're kind of connected Tartaria with the Nazis because they're considered the First Reich.
Okay, so let's turn that around a bit. So you've got some Germans who read books who were like, oh, there's this thing, you know, called Tartary. You know, you also have Italians doing it too. There were where I first heard about Tartary was in anthropology. Well, I guess my family I watched Taurus Bulba and Slavic movies and the Cossacks, and so there is a kind of a Russian thing about the Tartars. But at the same time, like, when I really heard about Tartaria as this sort of Atlantis thing was in anthropology in California Institute of Integrated Studies. There's like a class that teaches you on anthropology where you have to be careful of the vegetable sheep of Tartary, because at one point there was some book in the 15th century, which we have on the Tartary Nova and you can check out. It's like public domain from the 15th century that shows that the Italians were searching for this land of Tartary because they'd heard that someone, if you go far enough east or far enough west, you get to this magical place, pseudo-magical because it was just highly advanced, but it had genetically modified things and like vegetable sheep, a sheep that grew cotton. Essentially, we found out later at the end of the book was cotton. It was a cotton bush. But everyone was supposed to be looking for a sheep that was magical, and they were supposed to believe that everyone just misunderstood what Tartaria and Tartary was. And so be careful as an anthropologist, careful as a student of archaeology, not to go believing in Tartaria. And it was like, I've never heard of this thing. So the only thing I've been told about it is to not believe in it. I mean, as a skeptic, it makes you want to look into it more, right? And so, you know, once you start looking into Tartaria, you're going to find that there are thousands of books, there are thousands of mythologies. There are the German Empire, you have to remember, didn't exist. There wasn't a Germany. There was Austro-Hungary, there was Prussia. But the German,
yeah, this is the part of the sneak peek that y'all heard yesterday. Y'all heard me break it down. Tartaria was known for growing cotton, and we got to really think about where is the historical place known that has grown cotton and made a living off of cotton historically. That's America. That was off the back of you guys. That's something that y'all planted and cultivated. So when you hear about ancient Tartaria, mention of his mysterious place, with advanced sciences and mathematical masonry and buildings and sheeps or plants or vegetable sheeps that grow cotton. You know what I'm saying? This is what we're talking about. They potentially are talking about America, man. Make sure you hit that like button, thumb up the video, support the channel. Make sure y'all support the channel, man. Cash App tags ticking at the bottom of the screen, and make sure y'all support the channel.
In Saint Germain alchemy name is not, there wasn't a state called that. So their interest in Bohemia led them to Tartaria. Like Tartaria is the thing that we were saying, the Khazarians had brought the Slavic Empire. And so you can see it with like the culture, because people are always looking, you know, in the 60s, people are like, oh, I want something that looks Bohemian. Well, if you want something that looks Tartarian, you've got Slavic languages, which come from Sanskrit. So you have the same roots as Indo-Aryan stuff. So yeah, the Germans were really into that in the 1880s, which is, by the way, a generation before the Nazis. By the time the Nazis take over, all they're doing is they're in an echo chamber of a Germanized folk magic history. And they think that, you know, but it's true. They've studied this more than most people at that point. So you do have Germans that know about, but the Russians did too, right? St. Petersburg is, because the regions of these places, you have people that have moved back and forth, and the Germanic Protestants are in Spain as well. So they're all looking for it. They're all trying to find this pre-Muhammad, maybe Maimonides period, where Maimonides, by the way, is when Spain was Muslim. There was a Jewish doctor who wrote the laws for the society. And so when we talk about, oh, how the Muslims a long time ago, they were great. They had, anyone could do this and that. You could be whatever.
Hold on. Who wrote the laws? And are you telling me the Muslim laws?
Yeah. So at the time, there was a Muslim country. They had this Khazarian Jewish from Alexandria rabbi. A great episode on it, by the way. I'll send you from my channel. On Maimonides. And so I actually went to Cordoba, which is the city in Spain where in the 11th century, they allegedly had electricity because they had the water wheels. And I'll tell you what, I believe it from everything I've seen there. Like, I mean, I've seen all of the books that the Arab designers had on alternate current and this idea of actually producing electricity. I'm completely convinced. And they have giant buildings, like bigger than the thing behind me, that are just mosques, you know, but were they mosques? And from our understanding, Islam didn't mean the same thing. And we have a lot of evidence that the Catholic Church has manipulated what Islam has become.
Basically the royal family, man.
Right. But the royal family say they're descended from Muhammad, and so Muhammad's so important to Islam, right? But if you go back far enough, Muhammad means sweet wine, and you know, we should talk. If you ever do an interview with somebody I could plug, it'd be David Eisenberg Jr. He's the guy I know who's traveled to more places in the world than me. I think actually he's in the Guinness Book of World Records for most places ever. But he's an Oxford laureate. He knows all of this, and he's really gotten really deep into the Islamic side of this. But there's a thing called the Qumran parchment, and then the what is it called? The there's a Quran that's from Russia. It's not an Arabic Quran. I mean, it's Arabic, but it's not from Muhammad. It's an older Quran, and so this idea.
So now you're getting.
Now this is some shit. You know what you just said?
There's a Quran that's from Russia. It's not an Arabic Quran. I mean, it's Arabic, but it's not from Muhammad. It's an older Quran. And so this idea.
So now you're getting into what I've been saying for the longest time, that we are seeing books introduced into religions that take these religions in completely different direction. Not completely different, but okay, if a religion is going this way, these books turn them that way. Now they're going this way, and maybe as time goes on, they start going a little bit more. So it's like they're going straight up. Now they're just off 10%, 5%, and they're going in different directions. The Bible, no disrespect to Christians, the Bible is an amazing book, but what did they leave out? Dude, what we're hearing right now about the Quran, the Talmud is a straight up changing up from the Torah.
Absolutely. I mean, Talmud's a whole different bag, man. I mean, but before we do that, let's just reiterate what you just said. So you're talking about people like Pope Gregory, who's talking about these pseudo Isidorian decretals. I want to pump that word because I think people need to look into that term. But this idea that we just take a religion and we say, oh, did you know that really you're not allowed to be married? No, it's always been the rules. It's very Animal Farm 1984 to the religions, and the Quran is no different, because you have plenty of evidence. I know that Alberto Rivera's, some people don't trust him. I regardless of what you think, he's the priest who got murdered. He's, you know, the Jesuits say isn't a priest, after he was saying that the Jesuits had all of this information that were, you know, they manipulated history. So basically, yeah, the Quran had been manipulated in the, well, okay, and we haven't even done the flamenco thing yet, which is the craziest part. So let's almost get there. Hold on. Let's start with one more word, Beeldenstorm. You guys know Beeldenstorm?
No, what is that?
Okay, so Beeldenstorm was the first cancel culture. This is where the Dutch and the German, well, whatever at the time was Spain, because it wasn't controlled by their own people, but they had an 80-year war, and they just, who remembers anything after an 80-year war? But because, you know, turban in tulip, it's the Arabic root word, and the Dutch, they had tons of windmills like in Cordoba, and so they really were a very Arabic place. So when Spain went
hey, make sure y'all hit that like button, man, because listen, the algorithm is tripping. They shadow banning today. So if y'all don't hit the like button, YouTube won't push the content out. The more you hit the like, the more it tells the algorithm that people enjoy the live stream, and it'll push it out to other people. I need y'all to share the live stream on all your social media outlets. Very important for you guys to hit that like button and to share this on all your social media outlets, man. It's your brother Aboriginal Power. This is the Wake and Bake Show. This is Lost History of Tartaria Empire, of the Tartaria Empire. All right, let's get it.
Arabic and started getting into this inquisitional period. There was a lot of writing, and the mosques, they started in, you know, cathedrals and mosques are often back and forth, the same building, because it's a nice building in town. You just, switch the flags. They would rob all of the stuff in them. They took all of the gold icons, everything else. Big point of the Muslim religion is this no iconoclasm, by just getting rid of the symbols so that people can't even rip them off. And the faces they're not there to change, because you just shoot the faces off the walls, and then the people, they can just adapt to the new sacred geometrical spaces. So the building storm is, I posted something about this the other day, and without any context, someone saw this and said, it sounds like you're saying that everyone in cancel culture are the Nazis. Basically all I did was post this was a historical thing, and they took it to mean that I was saying something about Dr. Seuss or something.
So they were accusing you of accusing cancel culture people being Nazis.
Yeah,
and you know what I'm doing? I am
but
accusing cancel culture people of being Nazis. It is officially on the record. Johnny marked down that time. Sam Tripoli, it's in the books, accuses cancel culture people of being a fucking power bottom Nazis. There you go.
But it even goes back further to pitchfork rioting mobs. It's like they've always been like this. There's not a lot of progress that's been made doing the same thing.
So this is a true story. I was going to tell on Broken Tip. I'll tell a little bit here. I was on a plane yesterday, and I just saw somebody with 2 masks on. I go, oh my God, they're wearing 2 masks. And behind me, the seat behind me, the woman is, yeah, because it works. I go, how do they breathe? They go, they can. I go, no, they can't. Yeah, they can. And I go, and then I whispered to Tino, I go, this is some retarded shit. Her boyfriend jumps in, maybe you shouldn't say that word. I go, what? He goes, he literally says this, there's children. I go, what?
Are they retarded?
Yeah, that's what we're up again. I taught first grade. I am retarded, okay? I can say my own word. You can't take my word from me, all right? But the truth of the matter is, it's like you can't. Dude, they're not going to have to grab us and throw us in the camps. We'll gleefully fucking twerk all the way into there. That's what we're going to do.
Well, you know what you do is you just say, you're right. And then when they hand you the peanuts, you take off your mask for the rest of the flight and eat 1 peanut for every 30 seconds or a minute.
I was thinking about that.
That's what I do. Well, okay. So then we got Napoleon has the Treaty of Tilsit with Alexander. And so this is where the Russian king and Napoleon, actually, if you can see that picture, it's a picture of the dude, they're kissing, man. Almost every picture I've ever found of this is them making out. There's a couple where they're just like head cheek to cheek, like holding each other. But it's like, it's a pretty weird vibe. I don't know. It's not a bad vibe. It is what it is. You gotta, a really interesting movie, right? Like if there's this kind of homo erotic, like that cowboy movie, but it's about Napoleon and Alexander.
This nigga said it was okay vibe thing. Homoerotic? See, you crackers gotta chill with this shit, guy. That's some bullshit.
You're gonna, a really interesting movie, right? Like if there's this kind of erotic, like that cowboy movie, but it's about Napoleon and Alexander. I'd at least want to see it,
Dude, Richard Pryor banged Marlon Brando. Anything's possible.
That's a good way to look at life.
When you hear that story, you're like, okay, boom, there are no rules.
Yeah, well, it's a visual. It's hard to get out of your head. Now you can't stop seeing it. But yeah. So basically, you've got the beginning of this period is in 1812, and the whole world by World War II.
Listen, 1808, the disaster happened, the mud floods. By the time 1810, 1812 came, they started capitalizing on the disasters, and this is when they started destroying and hiding the evidence of our lost empire that was mostly erupted and stopped at that point of the mud flood. That was the reset. The government started taking over the land and purchasing land. This is when you got the World's Fairs in 1812. You got the Louisiana Purchase. You got a lot of things taking place when it deals with certain areas because they was hiding the evidence of the lost empire. Some people call it Amaru. Some people call it Tartaria. Some people even call it Atlantis. It doesn't matter what you call it. They're talking about the geographical political location that we call North America, South and Central America at the height of its sciences. I'm talking about advanced science.
Has forgotten most of this, but into the 1870s, you have holdoffs. So you have the Tartar state, actually, of Tartarian revival visual that's hard to get out of your head. Now you can't stop seeing it. But yeah. So basically, you've got the beginning of this period is in 1812, and the whole world by World War II has forgotten most of this. But into the 1870s, you have holdoffs. So you have the Tartar state, actually, of Tartarian revival of Tartarstan that happens in the 1870s in northwest China. And so, but by World War II, that's when the Spanish flu happens. And it kind of feels like there's some biological warfare there because it wipes out 100 million people after they bring American soldiers on trains with chickens, they get kind of an avian flu, and then they export it. And so it comes from the United States. And so this allows for the wiping out of, you have to imagine millions and millions of people. That includes specific families. And so these families that are running things like in Manchuria or, in Northwest China even, they're all completely replaced. And so the iconoclastic period, like you're mentioning in China, is really interesting because you lose all the royal families, you lose the original writing systems, you develop a new simplified writing system, they burn all the old books, they start introducing new books they say are the old books. And yeah, the idea that China is anything like what China was 100 years ago or 500 years ago, God, is laughable because it literally
too. It's one dominant. Like I do a joke about,
ethno-state. Wasn't before.
It's literally one ethnic group.
You know what it was before? 310 ethnic groups so far that I've really gotten deep into in China. There's about 52 languages left in China that are spoken by 1,000 people each. 52 out of the 310. And you know how many they're going to be in about 100 years? One. Because those are all gone. Most of those people, they're just they barely keep that for the same reason the Germans were going to keep a Holocaust. You know why? Because they wanted a museum. So it's scary over there for that reason. Like we want to keep culture alive.
Jeez Louise. Yeah,
dark.
dude. Yeah, it is dark. I mean, like so much of everything is just manufactured, right? I mean, it's just like the coronavirus comes out of Wuhan, or that's what they want us to believe. It came out somewhere.
That the Resident Evil logo, that's pretty interesting, right? But I mean, let's be a little careful. We could always go deeper. I would say let's tread on things that are 100 years old or older for now, because I don't want to get in that much trouble on my first one. But let's look at China.
Dude, I'm all about trouble.
Oh, don't get me wrong, but let's extend it.
Okay.
By the time we get there,
let's do a little foreplay before we get to anal. That's what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah, we just talked about the Spanish flu. I mean, the Spanish flu is a great analogy for what's going on today, right? It's 1919 versus 2019, or 1920 versus 2020. Is 100 years later, but it's basically the same thing happened. You know why we have a prohibition? It wasn't because it's like really the alcohol. They closed down the bars because they were worried about the flu. They closed down schools. They closed down society. Yeah, in 1919, when the Great Influenza happened, they closed down society and put everyone in masks, just like they did today. I mean, it's a playbook. You know, the guy who was in charge of the medical commission looks exactly like Fauci. You have to see the guy literally looks like a clone, like some Matrix deja vu. But there's some. So when I first got into a lot of this stuff, I was mainly just kind of interested in synchronicities, and I was like, well, history probably has things that happen, kind of. Like, you always hear history rhymes or history repeats itself or whatever. But that's when we started finding out like some of this stuff literally is the same event. But it doesn't always have to be. I mean, so with China, you have literally the same thing that's happened today. Like they're completely forcing everyone. Yeah, there you go. Look at this.
Oh my God.
Right. I mean, so this is the kind of thing that we're going through where there's kind of a playbook that they're using. Okay, so in terms of China, you want to do the rimming of it, like as you said. There's the Chinese ghost cities.
Is that what you can consider foreplay?
I wanted to sound classy, but let's.
I don't even want to know what second base is to you, dude. Which is very interesting, dude. I mean, go on.
How about those giant cities that have no one living in them yet, right? So China built these huge ghost cities for whatever's going to come next, right? So what is that plan? Is that just for the Chinese ethno state? Well, considering how the New World Economic Forum is working with China, I don't think so. I think that's why they're not working directly with Russia as much. Russia already has a reduced population, so it's kind of easy to imagine how they can control that huge amount of space. And even if they were to completely remove the Russian people, which, you know, like there obviously have been implements headed towards, but Putin's done a pretty good job of kind of protecting it. And they have organics, like they're doing the right thing in certain respects to try to keep their population at least sustainable. But China is not, and so we're headed towards a point where it could easily be expats from all over the world that end up in these new Chinese cities that are designed for whatever comes next. I think that's what's interesting to me about the Tartarian reset is that we look back and, you know, there's plenty of evidence of Tartaria. We always look at society as being, this is the highest point in history. And that's a bad way to look at things. Often people had really great things going for them. I mean, even if you just look at what we believe to be true about Rome, Rome had aqueducts that were incredible, like in fountains that were like the free water systems of Rome were incredible. And the Phoenicians doubly so with their uses of alloy. And the Berbers, by the way, you're talking about the word retarded, like, you know, the Tartaria, there's a bunch of things like tarnation and, you know, the derogatory uses of Tartaria, tar on your teeth and tar feather and tar baby and all of these things, they legitimately do come from Tartaria and from disrespect and derogation of the country, because they wanted to bring it down and make it not seem like this elevated magical place with special sheep, but actually a place that was just muddy and bad. In the old days, they didn't say retarded, they would say barbaric, you know, and barbaric just meant that you weren't part of Rome. But really, it had to do with the Berbers, who were probably the Thracians or the Tartars. You know, Berber, Tartar, you have the same sound. TH and P, B and G, D, like often these get reused and recycled because they're just trying to put together these phonemes from Phoenicia. So basically, yeah, we're about to see this giant reset again. And what's crazy?
Oh no, dude!
Well, but what was crazy is we look back at what happened to Tartaria. Freemasons, you know, if you look at Morals and Dogma by Albert Pike, which is like the 33rd degree Freemason text that you're supposed to be killed if you have, you know, he mentions Tartaria 13 times. I mean, the idea and why they robbed it, because if they wanted to take it, because it was powerful, but they were nepotistic. They had their sons were in power instead of the meritocracy of foundlings that the Freemasons built. And the Freemasons really kind of become more powerful because the Jesuits were excommunicated. So for a period of time there, they needed some other group. And so, you know, there's a huge correlation between the Jesuits and the Freemasons for that reason. But yeah, when they hid the history, they hid a lot of the technology. We're seeing resurgences of that technology. We're seeing, you know, I think we talked last time about the pantelegraph machine, which was the first fax machine in the 1800s. And it's just this machine that swings a pen forward and backward XYZ coordinates, and it's connected to electricity, and so the telegram could, you know, draw a picture like a woodcut, you know, and so you were sending woodcut fax images, you know, like in newspapers, like from Moscow to the Alamo, or from the Alamo to Moscow. I mean, it's crazy the kinds of technology that we had at that time. And so a lot of that stuff, giant diesel or alternate current motors and the things we hear about with Tesla, there's allusions to the fact that these things were just what they discovered from what had existed in either Lemuria or Tartaria or Atlantis.
Do these families always survive this?
Well, I suppose not, but these certain ones seem to be doing all right. You know, I mean, obviously you could wipe out and you change order. There's a trapezoid below the triangle, right? So we're mostly part of this trapezoid. The trapezoid has a flat surface though, so you can only go so far up. You can't keep climbing, and maybe you fall off the top once you get to the top. So I think we see that the height of the middle class or whatever is considered the ultra elite that you're seeing are not the like elite versions of occultist families that are the most secret. There probably are a few more things there, but yeah, I mean, you can easily imagine that some families have been reordered. But look at the Arab state. Muhammad bin Salman is the Sultan of the House of Saud, and yeah, I mean, we could go. That's a whole other thing. But they had 50 wives to the king, and so every generation switch which wife's son is the sultan. Jeez.
This whole thing is just fucking nuts. So do you believe that like the Roman Catholic Church is just Khazarians?
I think that the families that run the Vatican are there are families and they're specific families, and they've been in power for a very long time. They may have lost power for a while, but I think the question of what Khazarian princes really are, that comes into question, because this is why so many people talk about the Ashkenazi hypothesis, which is not fully dismissed, let alone proven, but it's definitely not dismissed. Is the connection there, 8th century conversion to Judaism. And so that connection.
Do you think that's real or fake? No, you said there's no evidence either way, but what would be
there is evidence either way. I mean, so there is evidence. So like, first off, you look at the fact that there are Jews that practice Judaism. I mean, that's a pretty good sign of there being a conversion. And then you look at genetics, and you're like, well, these people don't come from Palestine, but they do have this religious conversion. But then you also find that there are Ashkenazis all over the place. They're in Egypt. They're in all, so in terms of their travel, they clearly went places, and it was through the Khazarian trade network, which was, with Vikings. So why do lions from Africa exist on the shields of Scandinavians who believe that they're descendant from Solomon? Because they've been interacting with each other. But the problem isn't whether or not they are Jewish, because clearly they're following a mitzvah as a thing. But, Sephardic or Ashkenazi, what about the Beta Jews, the African Jews who, they live in Ethiopia, and they supposedly follow the mitzvahs better than anybody? It becomes more convoluted of whether or not you're Jewish, because it has nothing to do anymore with whether you're not from Palestine. And that's the question for a lot of people, because they want to know, do they have the right to occupy all of Palestine? And, well, I mean, that's where you're going to get in trouble for discussing it. But there definitely is evidence that the Ashkenazi from Khazaria, there definitely are, and that they weren't Jewish 2,000 years ago. So at some point this happened. In the 8th century, well, that's right after the Umayyad Caliphate defeats Tartaria. So to be converted and to have your people taken, there could very well be that there's a deep-seated generational plot to return to power. And that might be what some of these families in Russia have been doing. I mean, that's kind of what it looks like.
Crazy, dude. Just crazy, man. Have you ever heard the Passar family?
I can't think of it. What is the Passar family?
Basically, they're one of the... They're believed to be so powerful that they are basically... Nobody can hear them. Nobody can hear. They don't get listed anywhere. They own everything. So was it Marie Antoinette that got beheaded?
Yeah.
Hey, let me get a mic check out there. Can y'all hear me loud and clear? Is everything loud and clear? Somebody said no audio. I want to make sure everything loud and clear. Is everything loud and clear, man? All right.
She did.
Her son, I believe, is David, right? David was put under Freemason control, from what I've been told. The Freemasons, right? So somebody snuck them out and switched him with his like special needs brother or cousin, right? They switched him out, snuck him to England, where King David, I believe it was, whoever's the king was that day, put him.
Hey, make sure y'all support the channel, man. Ain't nobody supporting the channel today. Ain't nobody share the live stream. Ain't nobody tag me in it yet. I just checked Twitter and Instagram. Ain't nobody tag me in the live. Share the live stream. Support the channel as well, man. Cash out tags at the bottom right of the screen. I know they fucking with the algorithm, but shit, at least we got 108 in here, man. Shout out to everybody in the chat. Shout out to Lucky Sticks. I'm gonna hit you up too later on too. We got something powerful we're gonna come together with y'all with too, man. Hey man, hit that like button, man. Share the live stream, y'all. Let's get it, man. This is a Wake and Bake show. It's your brother Aboriginal Power. Let's get it.
Under his control, and then sent to the United States with like a butt ton of money, and gave him like 50,000 acres and a shit ton of money. And supposedly the Passar family is the one that at one point owned everything, and supposedly, after generations, they lost their power, and the Rothschilds took over. And there's this whole belief that the CFR is just basically a trust of the Pissar family wealth and corporation. It's PAYSEUR family, and it's like super deep. A lot of people, when they have children, they don't even get social security numbers. They're completely and utterly off the grid. We've done some episodes on it, and the funniest thing is
okay, I'm looking at this right now. Yeah, this sounds just about exactly what I believe. But the idea of the 13 families in general, right? That there's supposed to be 13 families.
Yeah, what's the whole thing?
Well, so one of them,
the 13 families, the 13 bloodlines, the 13 tribes is all come from the 13 principles of the Powhatan. They also call it the 13 daughters of Isis. It's the 13 principles of Powhatan. I'm gonna show y'all about that too, man. That's why you got 13 stripes on the flag. You feel me? That's why it was 13 colonies. And come on, man, we're gonna get into it. You understand?
Into this thing that I just found looking up the SARS is that they are one of the 13 families. But the 13 families are supposed to be descended from the 13 tribes, right? And so the 13 tribes, we hear it in biblical terms a lot, but this is the fun thing. We have Christianity, Islam, Judaism, this is crusade kind of war. They all believe in the same God, and right? So it's really kind of a civil war. It's a religious civil war. And they believe that there's this ISIS, Ra Elohim, Israel kind of concoction that gives power to this specific line and lineage. And this, the order of Melchizedek, you have the Aaronic priesthood, the Mormons use this idea of right. And the royal families, they all think the only reason they can do anything is because they're descended from these specific bloodlines. You go to most countries, there are a few people that run it. There are a few families. You go to Chile, there's 13 families. You go to parts of Uganda, there's going to be 13 families. You go to different parts of Russia, it basically comes down to 12 or 13 families. There's sometimes one or two's removed because of something weird that's happened that's made them public. But that's my idea of that pyramid above the trapezoid. It's there are some people that they don't want you to ever to know about.
It's King Louis the Eighth, I believe, and his son was, I believe, he snuck out by a doctor. It's so interesting, dude.
I mean, and it's interesting how that kind of ties to that Moses story. It's very similar to the biblical Moses story. So Freemasons do this a lot, this idea of foundlings, and it makes you, you get back into that idea of
the reason the stories be sounding the same, and that's similar to this, and that's because they are the same. These are the same stories romanticized as timelines that go on to help fix the timeline. It's called what you call a phantom timeline. That's all put together by what's the flamingo mathematician guy. We already broke that down. We're gonna have to get back into more of that series. I'm gonna have to do a part 6 to that. You see what I'm saying? Let's get it.
The Jesuit hierarchy. Can you just
hit that like button, man? Run them likes up, please. Hit that like button. I'm motherfucking stingy with the likes.
Freemasons do this a lot, this idea of foundlings, and it makes you, you get back into that idea of the Jesuit hierarchy. Can you just be the sons and fathers in this liberation theology? If you get rid of all of this nepotism, that you believe that your kid's going to be great, because often they aren't, right? And Catherine the Great's a great example. Her husband, Peter, was insane for the same reason that her child was, because they take the baby away from the royals because they don't want the royals to breastfeed or anything. And the kids go crazy. So the royals were, in the worst of states. Meanwhile, the Freemasons were raising their kids. So any love that they got were from Freemasons. And so they were realizing, well, what does it matter if your bloodlines? We just need to keep this order, this bureaucracy. Let's install somebody into that bureaucracy and let's raise someone else. I mean, that happened a lot. We see the results.
It's unbelievable, dude. It's nobody knows who runs anything. The whole thing is just pure chaos.
Well, I mean, again, if it's only so many families, then it's probably easy to find out the families to an extent. But it's not that they're running it; it's maybe they're dictating. Like the Queen probably wants to ride on jet skis more than she wants to have run the parliament. So that's why owning a democracy makes a lot of sense. Owning a socialist democracy, because you're above it, but the thing itself can maintain itself and it can deal with potholes in its own system. So this is why like these kinds of regulated democratic features of government are instilled by the elite and the dictators. It's not that they care about you, or it's not that they don't, because they do care about you, because you're their property. So they want to make sure that their property is well maintained.
So crazy. So if you had to go right now, what are your top 5 pieces of evidence for Tartaria as we wrap it up?
Okay, well, let's say Bellum Tartaricum, pretty good book. The documented struggles through Tartary by priest Martin Martinez is a pretty good look into like some of the first adventures into Tartaria. Check out like any atlas made by Mercator. Like obviously Tartaria is written on all of them. And yeah, like again, like even Ian Fleming writing about his trips to Tartary, like how recent is that we're hearing about Tartaria all the time? It's actually kind of funny to me that we live in a world where we have to corroborate like lost libraries and burnt down books. For me, it's like Tartaria is pretty obviously like it's on maps, it's in history books, you can look it up and find it exists. The questions become what are the evidences of how high of a civilization there was. And so Star Forts, I think, is the second one, because you see all of these city-states, autonomous city-states all over the world that are unique, but they're all like each other. So it infers that there was a culture, a uniform culture that made these things, even though we're told that each one of these uniform things were made by different cultures. It's more likely that they were one. And in terms of linguistic evidence, you look at Japan, you look at the word, for instance, Osama in Japan.
All right, man. That's it on this bill, man. That's it, man. We're going to get ready to wrap it up. Unless y'all want me to keep it going. If y'all want me to keep it going, man, let's get the likes up. Drop them fire emojis in the chat. You feel what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? If y'all wanted to keep going, drop them fire emojis. Share the live stream. Let's get 115 people in here. We'll keep it going. We'll keep it going. Hit that like button. Hit that like button. Let's get 15 people in here. Support the channel, man. I'm going to keep it going. I'm going to keep it going. Support the channel, man. We're going to keep it going. All right, y'all ready? Let's get it. I want y'all to hit that like button. Let's go. We're about to get right into the meat and potatoes of the other one right now.
How'd it feel?
I mean, I guess the real comparison, I guess you could make, would be like the end of a game, right? So winning a game with 5,000 or 10,000 people in the stands, or doing a great show with 1,000 people in the audience. Actually, I would think the comedy gave a bigger hit because
shout out to everybody in the chat. Hit that like button, man. Let's get it. Let's get it.
Wouldn't need to think about it. It would just be totally understood. This would happen a lot. I was also feeling I was getting what I'm calling like a download, like a computer stick was placed in my head, and a whole bunch of stuff was just downloaded into my brain. And actually, since that time, I'm still, you might say, trying to go through the hardware of my brain to figure out what files had been put in my head, because it was just like a mass of information. So this was all happening in like a microsecond.
Make sure y'all hit that like button, y'all. Support the channel. Need y'all to thumb up the video. If y'all want to support the channel, Cash App tags at the bottom right of the screen. You know what I mean? Hit that like button. We're going to continue the live stream. Let's go.
And in this moment of realization, it was like, oh yeah, when all of this was gone, I realized everything I'd ever thought I wasn't. It was all just a fiction. That was just a made up story. And now the story had crumbled, and what was left was real. The only thing that was truly real. Right? And in that moment, I was just
shout out to my brother Bat Creek, man. Shout out to Bat Creek, supporting the channel, man. Supporting the channel. We appreciate all the support, man, for my time and content. We appreciate that, man. Shout out to the brother Bat Creek. Don't let Bat Creek be the only one to support the channel, y'all. Make sure y'all support the live stream. I'm gonna give y'all another round of this fire heat that we got cooked up for y'all. So, man, let's get right into it, man. Shout out to the brother Bat Creek once again for supporting the channel. Y'all don't let him be the only one. Y'all make sure y'all support the channel.
That's right. For 50 years, American Home Shield has protected household budgets from the explosive plant mine.
Let's get that up a little bit.
It's beautiful. It's unifying, or in this case, it's the realization I'm not me, I'm not the self. But it was also confusing because you think you have this complete package. You come out of it, and it's like you've seen I describe it as like a part of the computer screen has been perfectly lit.
Let's skip this up a little
bit. I was shown, and the other part has some ideas on, but
I've never been through the near-death experience, but again, like lately, we've been talking to so many amazing people on this show, and they have so much great information. And when I put it all together, I just go, well, I don't have a clue what the answer is, and the true knowledge is saying that you don't know. I feel like that's a very Zen moment to get to, is where you're just kind of like, I don't have a clue of what the actual answer is, but I could tell you kind of what I've learned along the way. And I think that's a very important place to get to. And I think our egos a lot of time get in the way of getting to that. And that we've invested so much into a certain narrative that we end up just like almost wanting to be right instead of do right. And do right is, wow, there's some new information. Maybe I was wrong.
Yeah, the best way I've come to share it with people is you don't really learn what's true. You learn what's not true. And more you begin to see false and drop it. And that's really the path. People try whatever field you're trying to get through. You're trying to find some sort of truth, but if you knew what the truth was, you wouldn't have to do the work. You'd be living it, right? So what you can do is find what's not true, what's false, and let that go. And eventually you'll let go more and more and more. Life it gets confusing, like you say, because you're letting go of what you thought you knew, and nothing replaces it. You're just letting the stuff go, but you start to be freer, you start to be more open, and then one day you come to something, can't let that go. I can't drop that. Oh boy, that might be true. So it's very weird. You don't walk into it. You kind of back your way into it as you're getting rid of the garbage. And once you get to the stuff that's no longer garbage, you go, oh, I think I got something true here. So it's really weird. It's kind of backwards how most people do it.
I love that. I totally agree with that as well. It's like I never thought about it that way, but I do believe it's like you don't really find out what's true. You find out what's not true, and then you drop that, and then you keep reassessing. And for me, everything is like a jigsaw puzzle, and like what pieces click and what don't click, and how, like, am I trying to smash this piece into this puzzle to make this piece fit, or does it just click really easy, which makes me think maybe that might be a part of the puzzle, that this piece fits this part of the puzzle right there at that moment. And yeah, I completely. Before we get into the other stuff, I want to go. I've been asking this because we've had some really interesting guests on, and I'm like, what is your thoughts on where we live, who we are, what is this whole place? I was talking for a little while that I definitely think it's a haunted house, but I'm starting to think of it more of a haunted house safari, and we're the exhibits that they are feeding and manipulating and trying to get a certain reaction out of, and that there's all these actors playing this game to kind of get a reaction from us.
Yeah, I'd be curious just before we start then, like Johnny and your friend there, I'd be curious if you had to give like a one sentence, what would you describe? What do you think reality is?
That brought me into broken simulation. We're in a simulation. I think we're in the wrong one. My ship's on like Trump's president. People don't want him to be. We got the vaccine. We're conspiracy theorists. We're right, and that's not supposed to happen.
Yeah, I use simulation as a shorthand, but I would say more an illusion, probably. At least this waking life as we know it,
Hit that like button, man. Let's skip it up a little bit.
I just completely 100% agree with that. And it's just like you can take this so far if you really want to dig into it. Like you say, you can look into it on level 1, but you can take this foundational levels deeper and deeper and deeper. And that's actually what's happening. As crazy as our world is right now, and it is insane. It's insane because there's a door that's open, I think. I think there's a door to knowledge that's opening right now. Narrative that has so many holes in it. It just doesn't make sense. Weird stuff going on for about 50 years of our history, and I think that's the answer to your question. There is the time frame right about what people think of as the Civil War, whatever that is, the U.S. Civil War. That's like the beginning point of the creation of what we know of as everything in our world, not just history. But if you start looking for products and government ideas and scientific ideas and commerce and everything, it all sort of starts to appear in the 1860s, 1870s. That's when it all kind of gets cemented in place. This is how we do things. Something really weird's going on in this.
Do you suspect that the Civil War is a product of that, or somehow related to that, or is that just incidental, the timing there?
Oh no, it's not incidental. And again, the question you've got to ask is what's really going on there, because you don't have any battle photographs, none.
Yeah.
We have photographs of supposed casualties and dead people, but a lot of the dead people don't really look dead in the photographs. They look like they're just actors laying on the ground. So we've got this unknown series of battles that we're not sure. I don't doubt there were some kind of battles taking place, but battles between who and for what, we don't know. We do have pictures of destroyed cities. And these cities, they look like World War II. Like
Atlanta, just devastated.
If you're going into Richmond or Atlanta or any of these cities and you're thinking of taking it over, like, okay, we want to take over the city. Are you going to just destroy the hell out of it like that?
Yeah, not even just take over. They wanted it to rejoin. It was going to be their country again, same country.
It's your own country that you want to rejoin. And then the second one, to create the destruction you see, because the destruction is like the marble. It's beautiful. The South in the United States before whatever the Civil War was beautiful architecture. It's like ancient Rome, ancient Greece is right there. And so you're talking about marble and granite and beautiful. And this stone is it's like sheared in half. It's look like a laser's cut it. So how many of these supposed 1860s cannonballs are you going to have to fire at these buildings to create the kind of damage you're going to see? With World War II tanks and cannons, it's going to take you a while to create that. So supposedly with this stuff, what are you going to be firing at these buildings for 20 days straight? So the whole story, once you get what little photographic record we have, already indicating we have a serious problem. Now we can't go further because that's really what we have supposedly photographs from. But it doesn't matter where you go back in history, the story doesn't make any sense once you dig into it. But at least with the photographs, it gets harder to prove. So something certainly in United States history, the Civil War is a marker point of something before and something after. And what's after is the world we've known and like our parents and our grandparents knew as this reality. That's when it was formed. So interesting. It's just so interesting because basically there's this whole idea of Tartaria and what Tartaria really was, when Tartaria was around, and did they just kind of just like slip in something new right there and then tell us that's what existed there forever, or this is the new existence? And there's just so much that goes on from the official narrative that has so many holes in it. It just doesn't make sense. Like I always talk about nuclear bombs, right? Like we supposedly dropped the bomb on Hiroshima, right? But they moved right back in, which defies the logic of what a nuclear bomb is supposed to do, which is completely devastate a place for 10 to 20 years. And then come back and destroy it. Like, why would you do that? Like, why would you do that? And then come back and destroy it. Like, why would you do that? And then come back and destroy it. Like, why would you do that? And then come back and destroy it. Like, why would you do that? And then come back and destroy it. Like, why would you do that? And then come back and destroy it. Like, why would you do that? And then come back and destroy it. Like, why would you do that? And then come back and destroy it. Like, why would you do that? And then come back and destroy it. Like, why would you do that? And then come back and destroy it. Like, why would you do that? And then come back and destroy it. Like, why would you do that? And then come back and destroy it. Like, why would you do that? And then come back and destroy it. Like, why would you do that? And then come back and destroy it. Like, why would you do that? And then come back and destroy it. Like, why would you do that? And then come back and destroy it. Like, why would you hundreds of years, if not thousands of years, or for eternity. Radioactive. People moved right back in. It doesn't make any sense at all. When we talk about things about space, now this is a totally different thing. There's so much stuff that doesn't make sense from an official narrative that you go, how is this possible? How is this possible? And with the people who don't want to look into the possibility of shenanigans, they always go, well, you know, this time it just went this way. So this remarkable like luck has to happen either positively or negatively for this to go down. But it always seems to happen. You understand what I'm saying? Like, it just didn't work out for the people who are making all the money and getting all the power. Just, you know, when we talk about 9/11, right? I get in an argument with a good friend of mine, and he's like, it just didn't, you know, things just didn't go the way they thought it was going to go, and yet they got all the money and all the power. Like it just doesn't make any sense to me, if that makes any sense, what I'm saying.
The challenge again is when you're digging into any of these core subjects and you try to share it with the average person's entire identity, the average person's entire thing they think of as me and the world and their safety and their belief net is built on a whole lot of legs of flimsy information, whether it's historical, whether it's all this kind of stuff. It's whole science. It's what mom and dad told me, what, you know, whatever. It's all there. And the problem is, it's not just if you start questioning one thing that it's going to get a bit scary. The problem is if you start questioning one thing, you realize I might have to start questioning more. I might have to start questioning this and this and this and this and this. And something in them knows you don't want to go there. Your whole world's going to shut down if you do. So just put the wall up and it's safe. So that's really what you're seeing. You'll see when you try to present this to somebody. What I learned early on is all I'm seeing is their own egoic wall projected of just safety. It's like if this goes, who knows what else is going to go too. And so that's the thing. If you can ever break through with somebody on just one thing, a whole lot of other stuff might come down really soon too. And so it's interesting to watch when it does happen.
That happens a lot with flat Earth. That's the one that when people, if you believe flat Earth, you can't believe nothing else.
Yeah. There are things out there that are certain things where, like, you just go there, very hard to come back from. And it's not that's not, I don't mean that in a negative way, but it's like luck.
Takes down so many other things with it that it's hard to rebuild the whole structure if you start saying, holy cow, this, or even if you take something like the flat Earth. So even if someone says, oh, I don't necessarily agree there's a flat Earth, but I no longer can guarantee there's a ball Earth anymore. There's just as much information that can prove either now. Just that is enough to start breaking down a whole lot of other stuff. And
so when you go into because I love this World Fair. I mean, it's just so mind-blowing to me. And you wrote a book on, what's the name of your books? I'm going to make sure they get all the links to your books because I'm going to order this because you just blew my mind.
Yeah, it like I said, just came out with a revised copy of it. It's called Exposing the Expositions. And the new one will be revised 2021 in the title. And it takes you through the fairs really from 1851 to 1915. After the fair in San Francisco, they had a big change in what the fairs were. But there's so many bizarre elements to this because every city, of course, has a giant fire in it. Like take Chicago. Chicago was a giant fire in 1871, supposedly, right? Burns down the whole city. So they built 700 acres of the Columbian Exposition. Destroy the whole thing the year later, but wait a minute, don't they need buildings for supposedly the stuff that's burned down? How about San Francisco, right? San Francisco has a supposed earthquake, which I don't think was an earthquake. I don't even know if anything happened at all. But supposedly their whole city is destroyed. People are still living in tents in 1915, according to the story. They build, again, 1,000 acres of buildings, and as soon as it's done, destroy the whole thing. Well, the city needs buildings. People are living in tents. This would be perfect. So the more you look into the fairs, the stupider they get. And when it comes to the building of this, when I first bumped into this, I was studying cathedrals in Florence. I had gone to Florence and I was studying the energetic way cathedrals work and how the energy structures might have functioned with them. And then when I came back, I just bumped into the World's Fairs and I thought, this is an interesting subject. I'm going to look into this just out of curiosity, right? And I looked into it for about 2 or 3 weeks, some really good YouTube videos. John Levy had a good one at the time and a couple other people. And I watched them and I said, I think this should be a book, but I don't know yet if it should be a book. So I went to some building contractors that I know. And I took them, these are guys who build, big stuff their whole life. And I took them the photos of like the Chicago Exposition. And I first of all, they went, what the hell is this? And I said, oh yeah, this was built in 1893 in Chicago. And they're like, I don't think so. But anyway, so I asked them, I said, could you build this fair today? I said, if I gave you unlimited money, you have unlimited workforce, could you build this? He said, yeah, I could build this for you. I said, how long would it take you? So, well, it's going to take me 2 years for the planning because we got a lot of work to do with the landscaping and the lakes and the lagoons and the water stuff. So 2 years to put all this together. It's the thinking process. Give me 2 to 3 years to landscape it because we're going to have to dig out, these lakes and these canals and the way this stuff moves. This is a huge engineering project. And then you're moving in all the sidewalks, all the roads. Then the buildings, if I've got 50, 60,000 guys, give me 10 years to build the buildings. So here, this is the Chicago Exposition, for example. This is a small part of it. Look at the scale and the size of this.
Look at that. Think about that, man.
He told me 15 years with modern machines and an unlimited workforce. Supposedly this is done in 1891 in 2 years.
Everything in sight here was decimated, right?
Everything in here, in this case, the unknown fires burned it all down, and then what was left of the stuff that didn't burn down, they tore down themselves. This is a small piece. This would be like, what, I don't know, 2 acres of 700 acres. 700
Oh my
acres.
God!
And the story is almost more improbable. The history, the settled history, the mainstream history rather, is that these were all built with substandard, sort of temporary paper mache.
They call it solid staff. Yeah.
Yeah, which is, that's almost to me more improbable than this idea they built the whole thing, using established techniques at the time.
Okay, so take the building in the center of this photo. That was, I think, like a government building or something like that. The beautiful dome and whatever else. Okay, so even bigger than this in Buffalo was the electrical tower. It's 395 feet high. It could hold, I think, 100,000 light bulbs, and it had elevators that ran in the middle of it to the top, where you could take people to the top and you could have a view over the Buffalo World's Fair. Are you going to build that out of wood and plaster, and you're going to have people taking elevators to the top and stand on it? Of course, it's got to be a extremely strong structure. So just to build the Buffalo Electric Tower, one building at one World's Fair, that alone is going to take you 2 years. So how the hell are they building the rest of this in 2 years? So that, as soon as I got the information from the building contractor, and we went through a lot of stuff. We went through the construction photos.
My God, they said that was 2 years.
Yeah, that's a Buffalo Electric Tower. That's supposed to be built out of wood and plaster. It's the story. It's the historical narrative.
In my hometown of Cortland,
where is the electricity, that much electricity coming from to power those kind of lights? They say it's supposedly Nikola Tesla figured some way to bring energy from Niagara Falls into Buffalo, but yeah.
In my town of Cortland, New York, where I grew up, it took them 3 years to fix the smallest bridge I've ever seen in my life. 3 years. And that was in the 80s and 90s. 3 years. And you're telling me they built all that in
like Johnny, because you're looking stuff up. Have you got get some more on the Columbian World's Fair? Just throw a couple of more of the Columbian expositions, some of the ones that show a few more of the buildings, just so that the guys can and everybody can see.
I've always enjoyed looking at these images. There's something tantalizing about them, I can see why you went down the hole.
Why do they need to all look like they're in ancient Rome or ancient Greece?
Yeah,
so that again was the next question. Are they really building them, or are these part of this potential worldwide civilization where ancient Rome and ancient Greece is
a little wider look at that one image.
Oh my God, that's a fair?
Yeah,
like
and as he
go down
said,
a little bit.
the
I saw one.
limited-
If you just scroll down,
Okay.
go down to like the one. Like scroll down to the next one of the next photos. It's the one on the in the middle and the right. Oh, it was in that section part.
Here?
So it's just like this one just above you, for example, where the flag is. One with the flag in the center. Yeah, there's a good one. So that's another part of the fair. That's looking. So you were looking one way towards the dome. Now you're looking the other way. So this is just the lagoon area. This is just this small little one section. So now you're seeing it from both sides.
Looks like this times 10. It looks like the Caesar's Palace times 10.
So let me ask you.
I mean, that would rival the Capitol. That would rival DC.
All right, let's get it, y'all.
Amazing.
And I mean, yeah, this is just a tiny little part of the fair. If you keep,
And it's 120 years ago too. Is what we're talking about. To be clear.
Supposedly 1891 they built this, and not just they were building the fair at this time. Oh no! At the same time they were building the University of Chicago right next door, with of course all Gothic cathedrals, Gothic structures, giant. Because building something like take the map, pull the map up, the one that's in top second row. Yeah, that one right there. So this is a map. Pull that one up. This is a map that was made at the time of all the buildings at the fair. So this is a really good thing to see the scale of it. So this is the Chicago Exposition. Okay.
Oh wow.
That's it. That's the entire scale, and it goes all the way to the back where you can see the Ferris wheel barely at the edge of the horizon.
Oh my God!
This is all the Chicago Exposition. Now, the building you see in front of you, that was known as the Manufacturers Building. It was the largest building in the world at the time. You could put 300,000 people in there.
Is there a modern event?
So 3 Rose Bowls filled with people could fit in that one building.
Is there a modern comparable event? Is this like the Olympics where countries competing to host these? What would you say is comparable in modern times?
They're still doing it.
They're still doing them. They still have them. They've just scaled.
But is there anything like it now?
No.
I mean, like Disneyland, maybe something like that.
Means building an Olympics is a little bit of there, but again, you're only building 4 or 5, maybe 6 stadiums where stuff is going on, and some hotels, and I mean, look at what's being built here. You've got the giant buildings all on your left. You've got all of these lakes are supposed to be remade. They were actually quarried out. You've got that at the bottom of your screen here where it says bird's eye view. That's supposed to be a moving walkway. That's supposed to be an electric walkway where you didn't actually have to walk. 1871. You can just stand on this and it'll take you by yourself. When you move a bit to the left, you start moving into the country building. So every country there had its own building. Then you move a little further to states. Every state in the Union had its own building. And then you move further up and you hit the midway. That's where all these things like I talked about, the historical exhibits are. And every building, of course, is loaded with artwork and machinery and technology and paintings. And the one building, a smaller building here, it was the Illinois building, the building for the state of Illinois. There's a book on the fair that lists everything at it. The fair book is 4,000 pages long. It took 22 pages to list everything that you could find just in the Illinois building alone.
Wow.
Oh my God.
This is the scale of these things, and they did them in Chicago, in Philadelphia, in Buffalo, in New York, in Nashville, in Omaha, in.
So you're telling me like every major city in in almost the world had one of these?
Milan, Paris, Brussels, Copenhagen,
Mexico,
Rome. Yeah, there'd be one in Mexico. There'd be one in Buenos Aires, in Rio, in the Philippines. You'd have them in Cambodia. You'd have them in Sydney, in Melbourne, in Tokyo.
Are there remnants? Are there many remnants of these?
Not many things are left, of course. There's always usually one building in many cases that survives. That they say they had to make one a permanent structure because they had fire concerns for certain artwork, so they needed one to survive. But like in Chicago, the only buildings that exist are the current art museum. I think that was the or museum of something. Anyway, in downtown, I can't remember the name, of course, off the top of my head. There's a building that's out here in Norway that had been Norway's building. They moved it back here. I went to see it a few months ago. There's the Pabst exhibit. So Pabst Brewery had a thing in the manufacturers building. That's still in Massachusetts. That's about it. That's all that's left.
So what is the implications are that there was this civilization and some parasites came through and wiped them out and then wiped the history out? Is that what we're saying here?
Okay, so after I did this research, and of course the fun thing is if you start showing this to the average person, they'll just tell you, yeah, but people were craftsmen back then. Back then they knew how to build things. They had a pride in their work. That's the kind of answers they would give as to how this could be done. But anyway, once I realized, okay, the standard narrative is just garbage. I mean, there's no way this was done the way they said it. You have like 20 possible theories from, aliens to building it in a parallel reality, whatever. But if you take it down to two logical possibilities, you've got A, they did build it in the time frame that they said, which would mean they would need a technology that we have no idea what the technology could be.
Hold on just a sec. Man, I'm having some technical difficulties, man. So listen, y'all. I'm gonna try to finish it up sometime tomorrow. So man, make sure y'all tune in. Make sure y'all tune in to the live stream tomorrow, man. It's gonna be fire. It's gonna be a fire one, man. So make sure y'all tune in. With that being said, man, I might do another one later on. Peace, love, and light to all the American Aborigines. It's your brother, Big Aboriginal Power. We out.
Suave on the track.
Whatever it takes. The alleyway.
Coco, this your season right now.
They won't see me. They won't let me, yeah. I gotta sleep with one eye open, you been making me nervous. I take a piss, my hand on the strap. I know the eyes wanna murder, I got a feeling, keep my stomach paranoid, yeah. I won't let them, yeah. They won't see me, yeah. I gotta sleep with one eye open, you been making me nervous. I take a piss, my hand on the strap. I know the eyes wanna murder, I got a feeling, keep my stomach paranoid, yeah. I can't let them, yeah. They won't see me, yeah. I put attention, all of my blood, all of my veins. They started with Perky, now that